that could be supportive to the Planetary Commons to have initiatives over in sound healing technology. I want that to be um, explored and not it just to be like a main focus of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, because in a certain respect, because I've spent so much time around this particular topic, um, my voice is going to be very strong in it, in the sense of um, my interest of moving this project forward. Because as I had mentioned yesterday, it's one of the areas after years of analysis and really looking at the growth of the sound healing community and all these things that I feel really, really like dedicated to. And I know other people are going to have their opinions about like what we can kind of focus on and all that kind of stuff. And not that I don't want to hear them. It's more so like I want to make sure that the platform is equal to everybody's interest of what they feel called to contribute to or create initiatives around and stuff like that. Because ultimately, in the end, creating something like this is going to take a certain level of experience and expertise, to which not every sound healer is going to kind of come from the same path as I've came from.
Yeah.
So
Well, my feedback to you is I felt that you held that invitation very well yesterday, and was clear that this is what you're coming in hot with, but you want to create space for other ideas and other projects.
yeah,
And the way we see this is like at this stage of a guild, um, like one, two, max three projects should be being discussed, and we
sure,
should quite quickly identify where is the highest impact, lowest hanging fruit, kind of at a matrix level, where we, as in the like, supporting infrastructure for you, can like help you identify. And that's not like, hey, it needs to be it needs to be um, like all of this work that you've done needs to be kind of brought into Unified Planet. That can be through a company or through an organization that could be partnered with this guild, and that we can profile it that way. Or you can do it as part of a guild, and you could do this as a DAO and it be fully in the commons. So just want you to feel like in it, no, there's no, from our side, it's like let's follow the energy of what wants to emerge, and like how we can best like support your entrepreneurship and leadership here. And so, my spidey senses, which is what I live by as an entrepreneur, is like there's a lot of legs here, and I trust you as the leader to do it. And so therefore, it's like, okay, how can we create space for you to bring in those business models, those like funding requirements, like that structure, so that we can take you through this 8-week process, and by harvest stage, we can be going out to investors in our collective network and going saying this only costs $150,000, and this is what the $150,000 could produce, or like whatever you decide is like the budget in the end. Um, but like going through that process, like we want some successes of like projects that have been like brought to and incubated by and accelerated through the Unified Planet. We would like to be able to point to those as successes so that others can bring more into this like Commonwealth engine. And so just I think you feeling as supported to kind of take the reins on this and like have this be the first project of the Technology Guild makes complete sense.
yeah. I mean, the the interesting part around this too is that hilariously enough, as much as we can sit around talking about robotic arms for Crystal Poles, at least from the from the from the business side of it, um, the there's two companies that actually need to be created like through this whole kind of initiative, um, and the crystal or the robotic arms is actually the second company. It's actually the preceding company. The first company that has to get started, at least in terms of, I can share a little bit of my my method to madness with you all, so you can kind of get a better idea of like where my head's been kind of trickulating around these particular areas. Um, because over the years, as I've kind of identified the different all the startup companies that Spirit has shown me to create, from a sound healing art car for Burning Man, to a wellness center that actually, hilariously enough, when Mark Hines was on the call, I was like, oh, this is so funny that Mark's here. Um, Utilizing some of the technology from Resonance Foundation with Nassim Haramein, and just a whole slew of other things that I've identified, to just like all the different startup companies I've thought about. When I did the Founders Institute back in October, it was interesting how the whole experience kind of like helped me consolidate the singularity of like, okay, cool. Out of all these visions that Spirit has given you, which one, not which one do you focus on, but which one is going to be the most low hanging fruit in terms of how does it support everything else? And then that's kind of when, as I was going through my process, I was like, and it's very much, especially doing my own inner work, one of the biggest things that came up against me in that time period was starting a crystal bowl company. Because I was like, for years people have been like, you need to start your own brand, and I was just like, no, I don't want to like sit around like hustling crystal bowls. Like, I mean, granted, I already do it on my own, but like having my own warehouse and like just like all the mechanics around it, I was just like very 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 adverse to the idea. And then the more I kind of kept digging through the Founders Institute, the more I started to realize, like, wait a minute, actually this is where it has to start, because this is where the market for it already exists, and becoming another player inside of it, basically, especially if you can corner a certain percentage of the market, then you basically have all the revenue and the profit to be able to fund every other project, and then have it be a biofeedback process of how it basically keeps redistributing the wealth back into the system, that then initiates and funds all these other kind of programs that you want to create. And that's when I was like, oh, okay. And then that's where you can actually get the funding, or at least some of the funding, to start the robotic arms in terms of research and all this kind of stuff. So that's where I was like, okay. So if we were to talk about a couple different initiatives within the sound healing technology thing, then those two areas are probably the area I would focus on. And the first one is actually creating a crystal bowl company, to rival, well, not necessarily that it has to be rival or competition, but to create a opportunity for the community to have quality products without having to break their necks over spending thousands upon thousands of dollars for these instruments. Because that's the one thing I've identified as of recent, that is like one of the entry points into sound healing, is that, at least amongst a lot of sound healers that I know, and then also people who get interested in it, the first thing and foremost thing is like, I don't have enough money for that, is always the commentary.
Yeah.
And when I was like, I wonder if there's something that we can do to help kind of like alleviate that process. Because then, and then another bigger question for me was like, why aren't these companies who say they're about healing and about community, are actually supporting the community by doing more kind of like philanthropic or altruistic programs or initiatives to kind of support, rather than it just being this kind of like money grab constantly of trying to just like fill their pockets and hit their bottom lines and all this kind of stuff. So this is where I was like, the more I kept kind of digging into it, the more it started to kind of reveal itself to me that like, wow, you have to do this. Like this, like there's no question in it. Like, because you have enough of the conscious mindset as well as much of the business capabilities, while also being altruistic in your desires to actually help community, and not just it be another like smash and grab and like just cool, like
Yeah.
let's just get money through the door. So
Shane, what research have you done on like other production facilities for crystal balls, like in China and that kind of thing?
So in regards,
What if I go on Alibaba and I search crystal balls? What do I get?
So this is where this is the interesting thing, is that you can do that. In that you can go onto Alibaba, you can go onto eBay, you can literally look at all of the manufacturing companies that the Chinese manufacturers create. And there were a couple things that I had identified within the structure of how to create this company, and especially at the time that this was kind of going on. We were in the trade war with China. Um, like Trump was only making things harder to get materials from there. Like there, and obviously the whole big push of like, bringing manufacturing back to America, as we should. Like rather than outsourcing all of our all of our kind of workforce and all this kind of stuff, and just basically giving our money to China rather than bringing it home and actually supporting our own kin, is really important. And so this is where I was like, well, if we can brand it as made in USA, if we can do it where we can create better, higher quality products. And then because the other challenge with moving with a particular Chinese manufacturer is that there's no guarantee of product quality. And then another situation amongst crystal bowls is that some companies cut corners. And what I mean by that is that some of them will use lead to put inside of their crystal. And what that does is that it reduces the heating temperature of how to actually create them. Because when you create a crystal bowl, you have to heat them up to about 4,000 degrees Celsius, or sorry, 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, to shape them and mold them. And when you add lead to them, and this is like a whole nother process that they use in glass manufacturing. So it's like, to kind of make glass a little bit easier to work with, and crystal silica and all this kind of stuff. And so, and partly why I know this is because, I've been distributing from a company in Nebraska for almost about the past 7 years. And I got really close to them, like almost to the point where they were almost like telling me all of their secrets just because of my relationship with them. And also I've just been like one of their best sellers, like in terms of just singular person going out into the community and like selling units. So the more I got close to them, the more that I figured out, like, just kind of by putting information together through my conversations with them, this is kind of like what I came to understand. Now, the biggest challenge when it comes to creating some type of marketing data around this, and this is actually a slightly side project that I'm not going to go too far on a tangent on, but there's no marketing data for crystal bowls, because the industry is so small, at least within like sound healing as a whole. It's so niche that there just isn't data for it, because there's only so many companies that create the instruments worldwide. So given within that facet, I've had to make my own projections of approximately what it must be worth in terms of like the global economy around sound healing, which from a certain perspective, I was like, well, it's got to be worth a certain amount of X amount of dollars, because of the fact that these companies exist, and the fact that they supply the world, and the fact that they keep they keep business going. So through my own kind of, as I was doing the financial projections for the startup company and all this kind of stuff, using Crystal Tones as an example, when I was doing the financial projections for my own for the startup company, I think I'd put in around 7,000 units at a 30% discount from the current market rate, and that alone was already $22 million. So, when you then re-add the 30% to the market, and then actually jack up all the products to a certain amount of X amount of units, you're looking at least a minimum of $100 million worldwide. So this is when I started to identify, like, wait a minute, like there's a lot of money being made from this that nobody really knows about, because there's just no financial data to actually provide it. So this is when I started to kind of like dig a little bit more, and like looking into all kind of like, okay, like what's it going to cost? What are all the things, and like all of this kind of stuff. And so to answer your question, the amount of research is slightly limited, but in terms of my own experience within it, um, based off of my projections, this is give or take the closest low-hanging fruit from what I can tell. Because then I was like doing projections of like, okay, you know, let's say if the market is if the whole global market is $100 million, which I'm probably sure it's even more than that. If you can corner at least 5% of that market, there you go.
Yeah.
That's, you know, annual income or annual revenue with, you know, of $5 million if we're looking at a $100 million trajectory and all this kind of stuff, combined with then, you know, how that 5 million is then distributed amongst, you know, for instance, if we're going to be using the Planetary Commons and Savannah House and like all these initiatives and programs and projects that we can kind of like help fund, you know, 30% of that 5 million can go directly into it. So this is where I was like, as I started to do more of the numbers, I was like, holy shit, dude, like this is actually where it needs to start, like the Crystal Bowl Company, because then, you know, instead of having to give your money to another wholesaler, you can just be manufacturing right off the line and you're good to go, you know, and then your costs and your margins are a lot smaller. And then, you know, your initial kind of research and development process is maybe $1 million, but if it explicitly can create $1 billion from that 1 million in initial of say 2 to 3 years of stretching it, you know, then okay, you know, like we all know the math. That's not hard to do. So,
so my initial just my kind of hunch, spidey sense on this is that this still feels to me like one company. That the bowls and the arms is like wrapped up in one company rather than two necessarily. I'd love your thinking of why that would need to be two companies. And two is like we already have
safety, actually. Safety. Safety and liability. Because if anything happens with the arms and they get fucked up, I don't want customers, clients, or press hitting the parent company with flack, because the integrity of the parent company of the Crystal Bowls needs to stay intact the whole time. And so because if anything happens, if it's not received well, like, because we know in terms of the business aspect of the Crystal Bowls, keep that separate, because we know at the end of the day we can make quality instruments out of that. The robotic arms are an experiment, and whether it succeeds or fails should not fall upon the parent company in terms of feedback, if that makes any sense.
I completely hear you, and I would still challenge those assumptions. I completely hear what you're saying, but like I think there's a kind of SWOT analysis that you could do there around,
Sure, of course,
you know, whether that assumption is valid or not, because actually fundraising for a bowl that's been specifically designed to be played by a robotic arm, and that this is like a product, like an Apple of like home devices, you know, because as a consumer, I'm not thinking about buying a crystal bowl and buying a robotic arm. I'm thinking about, shit, I can buy a self-playing bowl for my home. Like I'm going to buy that as one single product. So I'm not going to.
Well, you could package that as one, but you just basically sub a robotics company to manufacture the arms for us, get the Crystal Bowl Company off the ground, which there is room in the market for that for sure. I think Crystal Tones is pretty overpriced, really. I think you make really quality.
Crystal Tones is incredibly overpriced. I mean, in some respects, I wish David was on this call, because I'm going to give all my feedback about Crystal Tones. Lupito is just really weird. Like, I'm just gonna say it. I've had my experiences with him, and his whole like entourage of like, I mean, I'm gonna speak openly about this, but you know, his whole entourage of like all the women and men who like dress up in white, and like, you know, they're all like crazy kooky people, and like, you know, the whole shebang. I mean, it makes sense for them, and I'm not going to talk shit about them. It's just more so of that, like, when you want to reach you want to reach more of the mainstream, you know, you have to be really pragmatic in your approach and like not be this like kind of like Jesus coming down from clouds.
I feel you, and I think so. There's room with that. I'd be totally down to partner with you in like a crystal ball company, because I've had the same thing when I play. People want them when it's
everybody wants them, and the beauty of the crystal bowls is that, you know, generally speaking, because there's 7 of them, if one person buys one, they want the other 6. So it's like, you know, and in terms of economies of scale, like done, like you've already caught them by first glance, you know. And then the other piece around it is that so the slight beauty of the robotic arms is that you actually don't create a robotic arm company, like because we don't, like I said yesterday in the call, we don't need to create a secondary robotics like division. It's more of that we just need to partner with a company that is already like astute in what they do within robotics, because I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to have to build something from scratch. I'd much prefer like, you guys already have something done, cool, custom make us something that has these specific parameters, and then here's the software that we've created it through patent and IP that specifically works between the 2 hardwares. And then you also create a patented mallet which doesn't exist. Like this is where that, like, because the line of products that can be created through once you have a crystal bowl company and the robotic arm, it's going to be like a whole slew of different things that we can
So this seems right, and welcome, Andrea. Great to have you here. We're diving into the pragmatics of the next business steps of like what will be needed for
for the crystal bowls.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit. I've known about this project for like 5 years. So
okay, well,
we met in a journey based on sound bowls. So like, yeah.
Well, happy you're here, and jump in whenever you see fit. And so, and Shane, like as you're thinking about the Technology Guild, like getting your feedback to us on like, okay, this is where we're at. You're clearly going to be the energetic leader of this as an effort for the Commons, and I can see how this is a great story for the Commons of like bringing sound into schools and public spaces and hospitals and all the rest, like where we can like kind of build awareness with you. So, but you know, this is yours to kind of, you know, see this process up to harvest stage as like, can we get the first prototype funded, you know, with you by the harvest stage, and like what would that look like?
I suppose if we're going to go that direction, you know, the prototyping is actually going to be, it's still going to involve a robotic arm, but it's not for what we're discussing. And what I mean by that is that I'll break down this specific facet of how the Crystal Bowl company creates all of the tenacity for all the other projects. So as a preface to why the Crystal Bowl company needs to be created is that, and if I come up to San Francisco, because one, I want to actually come up to San Francisco because I want to actually sit down with you all and like show you all the numbers and actually show you all the kind of phase implementations of what Spirit has shown me, of how all of what we've been discussing, especially within the 8 topics, how this particular singular project branches and kind of cohesively integrates with every single piece. And then ultimately, you know, like what kind of all the because like I was talking to Andrea about it yesterday about just like where all this will go. But anyways, so and I can actually show you too like the product of what I want to create. So essentially, you know, I'm sure everybody here has experienced a crystal bowl. The beauty of the company that I distribute through Nebraska, they basically made an innovation within the crystal bowls over the past, I would say, I'm not sure how long they've had them, but it's maybe like for the past 10 years. Lucian, you have actually experienced it because you've been in one of my sound baths. So what I'm getting at is that the frosted crystal bowl has been the staple of crystal instruments over the past, like roughly about since the 80s, since they started creating them. there hasn't been any innovation in them since, like, you know, until maybe Crystal Tones came out. But even the ones that Crystal Tones has created are a completely different actual style of the instrument.
Mhm.
So what Silver Sky did, which is the company I distribute through Nebraska, what they did was they polished the frosted bowl. And so what this does is a multitude of things. One, it makes the instrument of a way better quality and dexterity and sound. If you can imagine and think about it, you know, because the frosted bowl is gritty by nature on the outside of it, down to the microscopic level at the surface layer of the bowl, it's uneven because of the gritty nature. And so when you're playing the instrument, as the sound wave propagates from the bowl, it's already breaking up. It's already deteriorating because it's uneven. Mm-hmm. And so when you polish it, you basically smooth out all the sides, and this is what adds the level of like kind of punch and oomph to the instrument. And so not only does it create a singular sound wave that no longer actually decays the moment that it's playing, and it's completely smooth as it vibrates outward. The sound quality is about 25% better, and then ultimately, which is one of the other benefits, the longevity of the instrument is now infinite, because there's no loss of quality, because we all know what happens when we use sandpaper for too long. It just gets
yeah. So what is there? Can you see, just Shane, in terms of like MVP? Could there be a partnership here with Silver Sky and a Robotic Arm that create like some JV where they would be your production facility in Nebraska, and we like find some robotic arm company, and like this becomes essentially like the marketing of a category of a new product, but you don't need to be like worrying about all of the like warehousing and infrastructure and all the other shit that goes on with like creating a production facility?
So yes and no. One, I've thought about the JV route, but the difficulty is that they set their pricing, and this is where ultimately all of it falls apart. Because
maybe what about this? What about if you were to contract with them to actually be your production facility, but it would be your own brand of bowls?
Mm-hmm. So I've talked to them about white labeling, which they do, and it's not that I haven't considered this, but the thing about it is that the difficulty of, okay, so let me I'll have to backtrack two steps to explain a certain part to get to the answer of what you're mentioning. So part of the journey around creating one of these polished bowls is that it has to be done by hand, and when it's done by hand, it takes 8 hours to do. And so this is why, in a certain respect, to manufacture it out of China makes sense, because the labor cost is way cheaper. But now here's the thing: because they hold, I don't want to necessarily say the IP, because I don't know if they can technically own the IP over polishing a crystal bowl and selling it as a product, because, you know, like anybody should be able to polish the bowl, you know, and sell it. Like that's not like special in that regard. It was just that they're the first ones that did it. Unless they patented a specific process that they do, which is, you know, that's a whole nother bag of peanuts. But the manufacturing process of polishing a bowl, you know, can be replicated. You know, it's just more figuring out how we do it, right? So to do a joint venture with them is one. I had gone down this route because I was like, you know, it would just be easier because then I don't need to source anything. But then we are under the scrutiny of what they want to pay, what they want to sell it us to us for, and then we have no control. And so so part of why I'm bringing this up is because the current market price, and this is because what this is eventually going to end up into is going to be a conflict of interest. and why I bring this up is because the current price for these polished bowls is anywhere from, it jacks up the price of a normal bowl, because, you know, a normal bowl is anywhere from, say, like $180 to $250. For these polished bowls is anywhere from $750 to $1,000. And so it, you know, from a market entry point, it is slightly less than what you have to pay for instance, like in the alchemical bowl section of crystal tones, but it's still, from a market entry point, is still way too high for a majority of people. Like it's just really hard for people to chalk up that kind of money. So the route that I was going to go through was to use a robotic arm to polish the crystal bowl, to which I actually, there was a robotics company here down in Burbank that I went and go talk to, and I actually did some preliminary work with them, and I figured it out, at least for the most part. So this is where, as I was,
Burbank, Burbank in LA.
Yeah, Burbank in LA. It's literally like 20 minutes down the street from my house. Like, they're a robotics company. You know, they have a, I'll have to pull up the actual robotics company, but you know, each robotic arm is like approximately like $30,000 to $35,000. You have to pay for the proprietary software that it uses per arm, which is kind of shitty. But you know, I mean, obviously, I need to do a little bit more homework in terms of what other potential robotic companies there are. But this one being a universal robot, super easy. It's like, you know, the whole UI, like the whole thing is like super simple. Like you could fucking teach a monkey how to do it, and it's that simple. So so this is where I was thinking, from a manufacturing process, instead of having to pay for human labor costs and then doing all this like mad dash you know, warehousing and production stuff, like we can just literally have maybe like the size of a two size garage that has like 5 or 6 robotic arms polishing bowls 24/7, and then, you know, and then the person who's just doing quality control is either me or another crystal bowl healer that can just play the bowl, check it, you know, make sure everything's good, make sure the bowl is stable and it doesn't shatter. Obviously we're going to have to go through a couple more like iterations of being able to beta test everything to make sure that the process and the grit levels and all this stuff, because the other thing I looked up was the way to polish a crystal bowl has to be almost essentially the same way that they polish crystal, like, you know, crystal spheres, all this stuff. It's the same material, so the same level of kind of work that they do in terms of the grit, you know, like, and I actually did some research around this too, because I was like, you know, I wanted to look at like the instructional videos of like how do you polish crystal quartz, and I found an actual good like DIY of like, this is the grit you start with, and then you move to this grit, and then you move to this grit. So I approximated that, you know, if doing a crystal bowl polished by hand is 8 hours, to do it with a robotic arm, given the human labor of the person who has to kind of just like move it around, shift things accordingly, and then the actual robotic arm doing it, is approximately about 2 hours. So now we've reduced production time to about, you know, down almost by 65%. So from that perspective, because then all you have to do is then find a manufacturer for frosted bowls. You pay for that, you pay the wholesale for that, or you go directly to the manufacturer, which are the computer companies, and then you cut out the middleman of the wholesaler, and then your margins, you know, spike, and then so then you're producing the bowls at, say, maybe $60 to $70 per bowl, and then you're selling them for anywhere from $350 to $550. So you bring down the numbers drastically of what current market costs are. Then, and so how all of this swings back around, Lucien, to what you were mentioning. This is the difficulty of doing a JV, because when you start plugging all the numbers, I don't know if they're going to be okay with us trying to, if we did do the JV, I think it would be a conflict of business interest if we try to sell their instruments for cheaper than their white label instruments.
Maybe you could do it like a Tom's model kind of thing, where there's a bit of a bigger price, but then money's getting donated back in, and like those bowls go to schools.
That's a beautiful idea.
The only problem with that at least from, and I can't speak for them, you know, obviously we would have to have an actual business formal discussion with them about it. I don't think they care. I'm just going to say it. I don't think they care. Like when it comes to what like all of us are doing, when it comes to like the planetary commons, the rebuilding of our planet, the renewal of our Mother Earth, they don't give a fuck. And I'm just going to say
and that's like that. There's a lot of people in that category, not necessarily don't give a fuck, but there's apathy and there's like prioritization. It's just like lower on there, like
it's lower on their totem pole of priorities. You know, because like they're like, because I know I've spoken to Jeff, who is the owner of the company, and he like, so there's two main people in the company. There's Jeff and then there's Shane. Hilariously enough, there's another guy named Shane that handles all of their like, who handles the manufacturing of their company. Shane's really cool, but Jeff is like just straight business.
He's straight business. I know him personally in Omaha as well.
He's straight business, and he's kind of I don't want to say he's a robot, but he just lacks a certain level of empathy in terms of like the conversational piece that like I've had with him. I've tried to establish a real relationship with him because I was like, hey, you know, I don't want to just be a person that sells your instruments. Like I want to be like a partner with you guys in that I support your vision, I support your stuff. And he's just like, yeah, okay, what do you want? And I'm like, oh, okay, like I can't get through to you, bro. Like Shane is much different. Like he actually has a real kind of level of empathy, probably just because of what he has to deal with at the company. So so this is where, you know, to answer your question, Lucian, this is where, you know, like when it came to like, oh, you know, why kind of have to start everything somewhat from scratch versus just doing a white label and a JV with them, this is why.
I get that. So I think, so next steps on this, Shane, is like you've got our commitment this week. We're going to meet you an hour, you know, tomorrow and the next day, and then we will write up like. It would be awesome as if we could take the self-playing bowls, the one page, and like do by the end of this week, present that on Friday to the whole group and say, this is where we're at. Like this is yours to present. It could be a deck. We'll put the deck up on the website and just get to the next milestone. If you want, like this is like the project, if you like, accelerated out of the Technology Guild.
Yeah, I mean this is where, in a certain respect, the robotic arms isn't the end all be all. What is truly actually the nuts and bolts is the Crystal Bowl company, and so this is what I'm also trying to convey is that the
I see that, and like. My intuition here is there's great value in what Joshua said of this like 1-for-1 model, where you could have a Crystal Ball company that was like bringing sound to the masses, you know, the opium of the masses kind of thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
And like part of like, for every bowl you buy, we're going to manufacture and distribute one of those bowls through schools, and that doesn't mean that we don't have like design models to incorporate.
Yes.
Tons of bowls, yeah, totally, exactly.
Tons of bowls.
So, and we can think about like financing that model as well, because actually that structure of having a business model where, you know, it was like half of the production is going into consumer and half of the production is going into public spaces. And like people see, because what ends up happening is those public spaces are literally marketing like billboards for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we have like a set of self-playing bowls in SFO, you know, and people see the bowls and they're like, holy shit. You know, it's like when you see the piano, the Yamaha piano playing itself.
Playing itself, exactly.
Like, that's amazing. I want that.
Yeah,
but the Yamaha piano is like 10 grand or 15 grand or something. Whereas if I could like go buy these bowls, you know, there is this like the self-playing aspect. I think it is a combined product, even though you probably license you're not going to build a robotics company. So there are it's probably good now to look to, in this case, Chinese companies for like low cost robotic arms that could be like adapted for this particular purpose.
Well, I've talked to a couple people, some people from Red Lightning. I've been in touch with.
Red Lightning company or the Burning Man camp?
The Burning Man camp, because they just because of their kind of their initial connections to just, you know, I mean, Red Lightning has so many different connections. I've talked to a couple of them. I have almost kind of like 2 degrees of separation to be able to get information, or to get this to KUKA, which is like one of the major robotics companies. I actually had talked to, so Andrea and I also have another mutual friend, Shane, who is actually how we met, because we were at his house doing ceremony. He has a friend who has a robotics company down in OC, which I had actually originally talked to them as well about this, which I think at the time when I had talked to them about it, I think they had mentioned they could create 4,000 units for about $250,000. And so, yeah, but the initial buy-in was that we had to, I think, pay in $150K to do all the research development to get the product done, to create 7 units, and then we would then, after the 7 units were, or once the product was refined and polished, then we would get the 7 units, and then the rest of the 100K would get paid in, and then we would get delivered the other, you know, X amount of units.
I can already see the Kickstarter video here that we could help you with and put some energy behind.
I've actually thought about what the, well, never mind. Keep going. Sorry.
But it's just like, I can already see it happening, right? You're saying, okay, like Self-Plank, we could do a kind of high production Kickstarter video that is like toms of sound. And it's like, we want to get sound and the power of sound, and you could make it educational in public spaces, in schools, in hospitals, etc. And we're doing that. We're bringing these to your homes, and this is the model. And you like really build a brand around this.
Yes.
You know, and that this could be like, this is a perfect example of something to come out of the Unified Planet Technology Guild. And I think that's going to be, that story will help with it'll help add an additional flavor and credibility and other things onto a Kickstarter video, even though this is a company that's being essentially accelerated to bring sound to the commons.
Yeah.
But like, if you can see this as like, and you know, this is your life, like this is one of your big goals for you to have. So you're at the reins of this. We're here to support. I can totally see the application, and you know, would love by Friday at 11 a.m. when you do the 30-minute presentation. I think you're on at 11:30 to the whole group. You're presenting like, hey, this is the objective. This is what we synthesized. This is the next steps. And anyone else that wants to join this project or help out in this project can do so at the Blossom stage. And you lay out what will be the objective of the Blossom stage for the Technology Guild, because there's people there that could support. And there's also, you might say to us and everybody else, okay, here's what, like, by the end of the seed stage, this is what we synthesized, this is what we've crystallized, and this is like this is what we need. These are the skills we need, and like, you just put all of that out, you list it out on Friday in a presentation, and that we will record and live stream that presentation as well, so you can use it for you know, your own, you can share it as you like, and let's make this like proposal. You know, this is a very meaty project, but like, let's make this an initiative that kind of goes to market, and like looks for funding, and just is a example of something that, you know, I've invested in, I don't know, like 10 or so startups. I'm not doing it anymore just out of capital. I put everything into Savannah, but I would totally invest in you as an entrepreneur, and this project. You know, it's like all my spidey senses are like, this has got legs, and so just, you know, I think like march on, and the more this process of the unified planet can support you, like crystallizing what the ask is, you know, that to us is like a successful application of the guild.
Yeah, because the other the other aspects of the company would revolve around actually creating certain funnels that don't currently exist in the market right now. And I know I briefly touched on this because the beauty of this is that I was like, okay, you know, like the crystal bowls can create revenue, but what else can we do like to create revenue? And then, you know, and this is when I started to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the market, because I was just like, well, what are the current things that don't exist, or like what are the things that we can provide that nobody else is providing? Because like, as I said, when I when I came into the space of like, wow, these, like the people who are making the money off of these instruments, when they don't really care about the community in a certain respect. You know, like what are the things that we could do to kind of like play off that weakness and make us, you know, a little bit stronger, come with a stronger arm. And this is when I started to realize all the other funnels, the funnels being what's it called, there's no financing options, so we would need to find a bank to do all the financing on the back end, because you can't, oh, I can't afford a $3,000 bowl. Okay, cool, well, you have a credit card, here, put it on that, and then you can pay it off month per month.
Yeah, I mean, all those exist as like financing options. Like that's all kind of set up. I would focus on let the main thing be the main thing right now, and
Yeah,
size down. Like, okay, what's the proposal? Like, if you could produce a deck that is, you know, like accelerated by Unified Planet, and like that this is like the first project of the guild, but it's an independent, like this emergent company, which actually could be structured as a co-op in its own right. You know, we could experiment with new organizational design with this should you want. I don't want to put any pressure on you with that, just see what feels right to you. But if the if you can come this week, the focus of this week could be, okay, like what are we going to present as next steps, and what's needed, and like what like be clear with others, like what are you looking for, how much, like even if you already have a sense for how much funding would be involved, like let's start to get that down, and we'll put it up on the website. And Amanda, welcome, we love you.
Hey, thank you.
I'm with you on this, Shane. Like I really see the need with the crystal ball company. I'm really on that. Like,
I mean, and the other, and I'm not sure if this would make sense to create it within the company, or if it needs to be its own separate company. But insurance, that's the other funnel.
Do you have warranties with the sound bowls that you currently have?
So Silver Sky does.
That's a whole other different arena from the insurance risk perspective.
They do. I don't think they have a full warranty thing because they're so fragile. Yeah. But they do have like a 30-day, like, you know, use it, try it, you know, if something's wrong with it, send it back. But that's more of on the basis of if there's defects. If there's a defect, you can send it back. If there's nothing wrong with it, you're kind of SOL.
So more or less, it's like you're always replacing these depending.
Yeah, I mean, because the other model I figured out within, or at least not the model, but the other funnel I figured out of how to capture people within it was to essentially like, especially because of the, you know, a frosted bowl that somebody gets to use or play with for 30 days is going to have some level of refurbishment, like in terms of it's going to decrease because of these polished bowls, and that there's no degradation of the product through the use of play. The refurbished amount is nothing. So because one of the ways I was trying to figure out, like, okay, how do you capture these people, like how do you get them into it? And I was like, well, they get to try it for free for 30 days. All they have to do is just pay for shipping. It was hilarious because I was watching one of those stupid infomercials and they were like, oh, cool, you know, like buy this product and oh, like we'll throw in another one for half the price and just pay for shipping and all this shit. And I was like, oh my God, it's just like this. And give or take, I would say maybe, you know, whether retention is 100%, if you can capture 30% of those people who are like, after they play with the bowl for, you know, a month, they're going to want to keep that bowl because they've already established a relationship with it. They've already kind of like seen the impact of how it helps them and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, no, fuck that. I'm not sending it back to you. Like, here's the actual like full pay for it, you know, like, you know, here's the financing option, or you can pay out for it right now. And then you can even be on a subscription model plan where,
Shane, I think you're thinking about all of the, you know, all of the right things around how would this get to market and scale in the market. And so, you know, we'll transition now into the Sound Alliance, and you know, this can be something like that. One of the points of the Sound Alliance would be like, how do we support the guilds? And so, you know, the Toms of Sound has got a great ring to it. And
Sound Helix is actually what I was naming it.
Sound
Helix.
Sound Helix. Got it. Yeah.
But Helix is spelled heel, like heel X.
Heel X. Love it. Well, so I just wanted to say, well, firstly, just big welcome to you, Amanda. And I need to go, funnily enough, I have an interview. We're at the final stage of the Facebook Community Accelerator, where if we get in as Unified Planet, Facebook will work with us to like basically help accelerate and like drive awareness to, they're going to pick up a lot of sound on that. So it's just because it's been, pistachios might not be there.
Okay.
But the, so I've just got to do that. So Andrea, it's over to you. And from our side, I'll be back in 30 minutes. But Shane, I would like love to see you crack on this week and think like, how can we support? What would be the asks? What would be the timeline to get us to a place where, you know, on the 1st of June, you're inviting in whoever it might be to come in and be part of the blossom of Sound Helix.
Sure.
And then on the June 14th, a week of harvest of like what would be like what, you know, what's next in terms of going forward from that. Is that right? That would be 14th, first. Yeah, first. Yeah, first is 1st of June will be blossom, and the 14th of June will be your week of harvest. So
totally
cool. I'm gonna run upstairs. Andrea, over to you. Thank you so much. And Amanda, would love you part of this alliance meeting if you can stay. And I know Mark and welcome Danielle. We'll see you in a minute.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I guess with the Sound Alliance, and Amanda, were you in it for part of it, or were you in the technology more yesterday?
I was in the technology more yesterday, so feel free to fill me in as much as you can.
Okay, so the Sound Alliance is the Sound Council, but it's kind of like an overarching, like how do you have like a better vernacular of sound healing in order to get it out to the masses, but also how it's being brought into like portals or technology. So it's like, it's kind of seeing that all three of these groups do have an overarching theme together. And so I've been kind of sitting between the different ones to kind of see what has been coming up. And one of the things that I guess has been coming out of Sound Alliance is what is the main messaging that we want as sound healers to come out into the marketplace that we haven't seen already being done? Or what are the mistranslations that we see in the marketplace for sound healing? Because like I'm looking at it from my perspective of like healthcare hospital systems and how to have this versus taking a pill or anything else in the longer run. But I just know that there's different ways that we have language about it and also how it's being translated within the public space. because like some of the memes are like sound teaches, sound activates, like all these other different aspects of what sound does, from a benefit of physical, mental, psychological, on, you know, any of those, you know, into social, financial. And so it's like, how can we have a better narrative between, you know, how sound healing or how sound is used in the marketplace, so it's not seen as noise to people that don't understand it.
I like Leo's statement from Woo to True.
Yeah, that's true.
And like the science of sound.
Yeah, and that's the Science of Sound Matrix, which is like what I'm writing up right now.
Yeah.
Which has a lot of like little memes, but it also has the benefits and challenges of sound healing within the marketplace as of right now. But also in a way, it's like, okay, if we're going to be bringing from Woo to True, what is the true message that as sound healers that are tops in their field, what would they want to have as a message coming out to communities that may have not been served by them before on a national and global level?
I think it's like selling to the people outside of the community that don't have an understanding, that we need to kind of show that there actually is science and this is very real. It's not woo. Mm-hmm. And it's also like kind of unifying a message as best we can in the sound community. Mm-hmm. My partner, Melissa, you know, Alexandre Tanous is her teacher, and he does not use the term healing. He thinks sound healing, like you don't say that. Because so many people identify as like, they are a healer, when he's trying to empower the person that's actually like receiving the sound, that this is just a tool for them to heal themselves.
Yep.
And there's, we know is true, but like he has problem with that languaging. When I don't, I still think you can still be a sound healer, but there's a divide there. So
yes,
really like getting that part of our community to reflect, I think. And I feel like David Gibson could be a big source for us.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to have him on some of the calls. I don't know him personally. I just know him from the different calls before. And I think I met him at Savannah House as well. But I do, from the medical side, like healing does have its own quotation ways of looking at it, which are looked down upon.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. So it's like, what is the better narrative or word that we want to utilize coming from those that are actually, you know, utilizing this on a day-to-day basis?
I have a lot of ideas to share regarding this question. Something I've been thinking a lot about on a daily basis. Do you know, Andrea, about my work, or how much detail?
I listened to your amazing work when you shared with us, and I know that you do a lot of there's a lot more technology that you're utilizing with your voice, but you're an opera singer by
cool.
And then you're just being able to, but you have also new technologies that you're utilizing and working with a lot of amazing people in the field.
Yeah. So basically I'm collaborating. Yeah, that's pretty good. By the way, I did a re-recording of the thing I did for this because the audio, I couldn't hear, my headphones shorted out during the thing. So I re-uploaded it, and there's a better version with audio mixed well, but it's a very different experience. Anyway, that aside, I am collaborating with UCSB's MetaLab, which is studies consciousness, and they've also written papers. My partner is a scientist who is a psychologist, and his psychology and brain sciences are his field. And so he's written a paper with someone on vibrational resonance, which is like a scientific perspective that really resonates with the woo, you know, as far as like, it's true that everything resonates. It's true that everything's vibration. And that's a really good scientific like platform to stand on. As one example. Another example of a kind of approach that I think would be helpful in moving this from the fringe community to the mainstream is, we don't say sound healer. It's not that healing doesn't happen. It's just that when we make the academic and the mainstream and the scientific community is really sensitive to making claims about something when there's not official proof. There's a subjective experience that people have And that's wonderful, you know, that they can say that I feel this energy has lifted from my body, or I feel I'm free of this concern and this condition. Like, that's amazing. But you wouldn't want to necessarily put on the product, this will, you know, decrease inflammation in your body, unless you have actual measurable results to show that, because then you enter into a dangerous territory where you're so liable to people who are going for that purpose, and like it doesn't help, or they sort of blame the
it's the liability that comes into it based on cure, heal, move within certain dynamics is
right.
True.
So my approach has been, because I'm riding this edge with audiences where I'm basically trying to prime the audience to be able to enter into a similar space or a similar container where like, and Shane is excellent at this when he opens up his when he opens. Got someone got a loud microphone.
I think it's Connie coming in from outside.
Welcome. Yeah, so Shane does this. When I first went to his sound healing thing, it was amazing. Sorry, I didn't need to call it a sound thing, but yeah, it was just like he would kind of, in the instructions, paint the picture of what could happen in the experience. And so that, you know, as far as our like people's minds, like their belief in something being able to help in a variety of ways is, you know, measurably a huge percentage of what actually leads to them getting better or things shifting in their experience. And so I think some like memes or platforms that we can stand on from the scientific community is actually, rather than seeing placebo as this like, oh, it's not real, it's not really working because it's placebo, actually harnessing it as like the power of belief can generate this profound experience for you. And then also like vibrational resonance as something that we have a lot of work on these days, and also the power of brainwave states and like going into solar brainwave states. And there's a lot on that. There's not a whole lot on like frequencies necessarily. There's like one paper that's verifiable from the scientific community, as far as I know, about like 528 hertz, but then they don't even really go into enough detail about like what kind of music they're actually playing. It's just piano music that's in 528 hertz versus piano music that's in 440. And it's like the actual quality of the music could be the thing that's allowing people to go into like a more relaxed state when they listen to 528. And it could just be the actual resonance between pitches in that song, that the harmonies themselves and the octaves themselves it's creating. So there's still a lot more research to really do to make claims like frequencies can heal, you know, in like particular frequencies can heal, but to say that vibrational resonance, like that's something very that we could really stand on scientifically.
And also there's a couple studies out of Germany that they're doing on frequencies to different organs and how, but it also depends on the unique state of the individual when they're coming in to be tested for that, to what frequencies actually will be more in resonance and which will be in dissonance. So there's different studies, but it's also still in process.
Right. And there's also like, so Alan Macy, who, and when his collaborators, and they work with physiology and machines that sort of do EEG and lots of different measurements on physiology, they know about these frequencies that actually do affect organs, but it is also kind of literally dangerous as far as experimenting too much with it right now. Like, we don't know. Yeah, it could like cause, problems with just directing frequencies specifically to organs. So yeah, I feel like if we kind of hold that approach of entertaining without endorsing, you know, so we're like, there's all these possibilities that exist in the space of sound as a medicine, as having medicinal properties to it. And it works in therapy, you know, but ultimately it's something that can contribute to well-being. And so rather than being like a sound healers who are fixing broken things, you know, it's like well-being practitioners or people who's like have this intentional containers, intentional work using sound that can just improve the overall quality of someone's experience. Healing implies like sort of that there has to be trauma. Some people might feel excluded from that because they don't necessarily identify with having a illness or some kind of ailment that needs to be solved, you know? And so it's very inclusive to kind of gear it more towards improving well-being.
I wonder if there's like a marketing company or somebody we could talk to that like are experts in these kind of languaging things that we could just brainstorm with. You know, I'd love to like have something like that kind of happen, and maybe even have some different like taglines, memes and stuff that we could then send out to the broader sound community and get feedback on.
You could easily throw a slapstick general surgeon's warning that, you know, disclaimer: exposure to impactful sound can cause cathartic release, emotional dissolution, you know, like all these like, you know, kind of play off of the cigarettes, play off of what already exists within the market, you know, especially because, you know, it's like, oh, you know, like exposure to smoke, like inhalation of cigarette smoke can cause emphysema and all this kind of stuff. It's like, cool, well, you know, exposure to impactful sound can you know, cause psychedelic experiences and so forth and so on. You know, like, it's not a guarantee, but you know, it might happen. So
Lucinda, do you have anything? And were you finished, Amanda? I think those were great.
Yeah, excited to hear from Lucinda.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm just happy to listen to see. I came in a bit late, and I really like what you were saying, Amanda. I just agree with you wholeheartedly about gearing it towards well-being.
Thank you. I'm curious to hear Connie's point of view.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like trying to make this week work. I had medical appointments and trying to get back to my clients where I have to be at home with my bowls and stuff. So sorry about that. It's a lot of different thoughts. They're floating around. Let me get a little bit grounded. The last thing that you were talking about was wording. Is what was coming up for me is, and Melissa and I actually talked about this. I have a disturbance when people use sound healing. To me, healing is more goes into the facilitator is more doing the healing for the participant. That's what comes up for me. I like words that it's like mindfulness, you know, it's like when we talk about meditation and mindfulness, and I feel like at its basic level, I feel like sound awareness, sound mindfulness is about like I feel like a word that helps. I feel like people less question mindfulness. Like, for example, how we more got into the hospitals is they were looking for more mindfulness and meditation. And so to me, like when you're talking about wellness, is that I think that that's more a language that people more relax around. Anyway, so that's what was coming up for me. A lot of other different things were coming up for me, but I'm trying to be as present as I can for today. I'll be much more present Wednesday and Thursday and Friday when I really cleared away my schedule. So.
Okay. And then Danielle. I think she might be in listen only.
I think too, when it comes to when you're looking for the architecture of the vernacular of how to bring this more to the masses, you know, because for a while, like before I rebranded as Spirit Medicine, I was medicine therapy, and I actually moved away from medicine therapy because I could tell just from my interactions with the people, especially when they were like, oh, like, what's your brand? And I was like, oh, like, you know, I'm it's medicine therapy, and they were like, therapy, like I could already tell, like by their initial construct, that they were like just the word therapy already is like, oh, I'm broken, like, or I've got like mental issues, or like all of this kind of stuff, and then even the term sound meditation, like that in some respects is off-putting to some people too, because they're like, well, no, I don't meditate, so it's like I'm already creating a wall between my availability to experiencing whatever this is. But then like I would call it a sound meditation, and then they'd be like, huh? And then like I'd play the bowl, and then you'd see their eyes like light up, because they're just like, whoa, like there's this whole different relationship with it now, because their perceived expectation of what it could be versus what it actually is,
right,
is I think the thing that through the use of our vernacular can immediately dissolve, and also promote a sense of openness to it, will really help as you kind of are deciding upon like, okay, what is the articulation of what we're doing, because that carries with it a very great level of importance in my experience. So
Sound alchemist, I really think like some kind of a word exercise would be really helpful, because this is a key piece to all aspects, from sound technology to soundscaping, all of it. Like the way it's communicated to masses is going to be a really big deal.
I think it's also, we look at like the polarizations of language. So we know that sound healing is where we don't want to go. What's the other edge of not wanting to go with sound? And then see what's kind of coming in the middle, because that's going to be the logical base where most are going to come to. So it's like we say no to saying sound healing, and other things like those are outside of it. Yeah, sound awareness for sure. But what are the other types of words that are just kind of like trigger words of like, I don't want to be put into that category or labeled in that?
Maybe it's science. Is sound science too far the other way?
Say that again?
Sound science, is that too far the other way?
I don't think so. But I mean, Amanda might have, everyone else is going to have opinions.
I've seen sound architect.
Yeah. I think sound science is very specific too.
I think these are all different things. Like the sound science is the science of sound, it sounds like. And then sound journeys are, sort of imply that there's an experience being had with a user. And so I feel like if the term that we're looking for is what the user is going to put themselves in the position of experiencing, so then we're not describing, either we're describing the sound or we're describing the experience, or it seems like those are the two things that we're sort of like fluctuating.
Yeah, it's like the sound and then the experience. They could be one and the same, or they can.
I think it's a genre. We're after a word that encapsulates the genre in a way.
Okay, so I have a secret word that I haven't told a lot of people about. I came across it sort of serendipitously when I was searching for this word one night, because I was putting together this like proposal, and so immersive sound journeys is first of all what I landed on as far as like immersive sound experiences, as far as like the most neutral way to like sort of be able to say that it's including ceremonial containers. It has, or sort of like an intentional container, and using psychoacoustic effects, or like the science of sound, and sort of and scientific frameworks potentially sort of integrated with ancient traditions. So I'm just like that whole world of like what would be a positive, well-being, improving experience. Immersive sound experience felt like the most neutral and non sort of impositional, and but then Escalapian is a word that I came across that was used in the Bonney method, which is a method of therapy that was used in to sort of demonstrate that sounds and music can help to foster transcendental states of consciousness. It was like a study done in the 80s, I'm pretty sure. And then I went to the source of this word that she used, Escalapian sound, and it basically describes this sort of ritual, for lack of a better word, kind of sound experience that's been used since the days of the Greek like oracle rituals that they would do. They would actually do immersive sound experiences, like, I don't know, thousands of years ago, to facilitate transcendental experiences as a way to sort of recalibrate as a tribe or as people. And so Aesculapian is kind of a totally unused word. It's spelled Aesculapin, and it might just be fun to research. I'm not saying it's necessarily the right word because it's probably too unknown. But
can you write it? Can you spell it out in the chat?
Yeah.
Write out in chat.
Yeah, Aesculapin.
It comes out with a snake when I go to Google right away.
Yeah, relating to medicine.
That's awesome.
So maybe that's the other part.
That's a good sign.
Bring back the snake.
What is it? What does it say? The definition related to?
Adjective relating to medicine or physicians.
Yeah, Aesculapian sound. So it's like got a medicinal quality.
So it's like cadesis. It's almost the cadesis effect of the Kundalini of the Ida Pindula that's used on the cadesis, which is used in healing based in Egypt way back in the day.
Yeah, so as far as it's definitely an eccentric word, but it's an old word and sort of used in reference to medicinal sound experiences.
Mm-hmm.
It's healing art, actually. When you look it up in Merriam-Webster, of or relating to Aesculapius, or the healing art. I like this a lot.
I do too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Go, Amanda, go. You always have some goals for us.
I think there's also the artistry of sound as well that comes into play. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, I know that we're looking at the science of sound, but there's also the artistry, what opens your heart, that's used in mental health, that's used in, with children going through cancer treatments or anything like that. Like they're looking for that as well. I like sonology.
Well, sonology.
I like sonology too, but I really want to know what it means. Like I
agree with you. I want to know what it means too.
And because if it more has to do with sonar or, I don't know, the sound.
The actual definition of sonology is kind of like music, sound with different architectures and spaces, the application of sound. I was toying around with it for my sound branding company, but then actually, there's the Institute of Sonology, there's like degrees in sonology, where it's really to do with kind of like, they've kind of taken the initial meaning of it, and it's gone deeper into kind of like really just the creation of sound, like through engineering, through computer sciences in a way. And so it's a bit confusing for me. If anyone can shed some light on that for me, I just think it's a great word. It kind of says it because it's got that Latin essence to it, sonos, but at the same time, I also have a bit of,
Well, it's kind of like biology. It's like all the ologies. So it seems like it's maybe more of the education within the sound or the sonar.
If you go on Wikipedia and you look up sonology, it's quite a nice definition. But then if you go deeper, it gets a bit deeper.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you like sonology.org, it's about you can study it. It's basically creating sound, like massively geeking out with sound. Are we trying to find a word, just an overall body to encapsulate everything here? Like, are we dealing with just like the spiritual side?
Yeah, we were discussing the resistance to the term sound healing.
Yeah, that was the first question.
Like the divide in the community, the sound community itself, and then how we sell things like the, sound experiences and, immersive, like I love that word that Amanda used as well. But how we can frankly get some of the woo out so people aren't afraid.
Yeah.
People get fear when they think of that stuff. And
I personally think sound experiences is quite straightforward and quite, and then you have those different aspects, the immersive sound, the healing, you can have all these things that come up.
Exactly.
I think it's best to keep these things really simple. I love your word, Amanda, but I do think it's quite, intellectual, that word.
We might lose it.
I see it's like that word. I see like the bring back the feminine of the snake, and So you use that word, and then you have a, what do you call that, a hyphen, dash, and then you could put sound experiences. So you can actually like use both. It's like, I don't know, I kind of like the use of both.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to pick one.
You know, what about the other, there are other, I don't know, I keep thinking about yoga. You know, I'm trying to imagine meeting someone at a party and they like, what do you do? You know, like that question, if someone said to you, what do you do? Well, I like, you know, many of us would say, or many of you would say, I'm a sound practitioner, you know, and then you go a bit deeper. Like, if you imagine being in a conversation with someone, having that definition, instructor, as a yoga, well-being expert, you know, I think we might be able to apply a similar word based on like other things out there.
That gave me an idea for a brainstorming prompt, which could be, if we were thinking of a word that's really related to healing, so like replacing, it'd be an adjective that was describing the practitioner. So like sound artist is an idea, sound practitioner, sound facilitator, sound healer, something that kind of included healer, artist, practitioner, facilitator.
What about sound vitality?
If someone were to ask you, what do you do? And you said, I'm a vital sound artist. I'm trying to sort of framing in a way that
I'm just wondering for that, because vitality is health.
No, I love it. I was laughing because it was fun to say.
I'm a vital sound
artist.
Well, we're dealing with vitals in the hospital, so it's like, well, we're here for your vitals.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but yeah, I think that would be a fun place of exploration, is like focusing on like, what would you want to say that you are, as far as like what would kind of describe your role as a facilitator that would include sound in it and the other word.
Like if you're presenting to a kindergarten class, what would you say you are?
Oh, that's good. I like that.
It's like if you can't say it to a 5-year-old, then you're like, what am I going to do?
That's true.
As I would say to a kindergarten class, I'm a sound woman, like a fireman. Sorry, just joking.
The thing is, that's what everyone is.
Yeah, yeah.
A Jedi? Just a Jedi sound artist? Sorry, Shane, go ahead.
You can just be maestro. I mean, I think when I had to do stuff with kids once, I think that's actually how I introduced myself. Because you know, some of the kids were like, they were, I think, maybe 5-year-olds, and then you know, and some of them were like, "Ooh, like what do you do?" And I was like, you know, of course my natural inclination was like, "Oh yeah, tell them you're a sound healer," and then I was like, they're not gonna understand that, and so then, you know, I was like, well, I'm kind of like a maestro of these instruments, and they were like, what? You know, and I was like, well, you know, have you ever seen concerts? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, you know, like the person that's conducting the orchestra. And they were like, oh yeah. And I was like, yeah. So kind of like a sound maestro. Like, oh, okay,
that's cool.
You know, like that.
What about like sound aid, like that? Because I know that that's used in like caretaking at different points. So it's just a word that's come out in the in-home care space a lot lately.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is this more of trying to figure out a new term for our industry, or is this like, what are we calling ourselves? Because I feel like there's so many different ways of showing up in this field, where if I'm going into Piedmont Hospital, I'm saying I'm a sound practitioner. If I'm going into corporate wellness program, I'm saying I'm a sound practitioner or a sound facilitator. If I'm going into an elementary school, you know, to the kids, I'm also changing the language for the kids, but to get into a school, I'm saying I'm a sound practitioner. And so, then I think there are the sound, more like sound artist, or, you know, more of the artist and performance. And so one of the ways that I've been working in terms of expressing what it is that I do really depends on the environment that I'm going into, and using a common language that they may know, And so maybe there's an opportunity that, you know, we already have all of these terms already set. Maybe we define what a sound therapist is versus a sound practitioner versus a sound performer. Because one of the things that I'm constantly having to do while we are performing with the instruments, the conversation that I'm having over and over is the difference between a performer and a facilitator is this. And going into that, I create a sound environment for you to go into your own natural healing processes, to transform or transmute whatever it is, you know. And again, the language will come from whatever environment I'm going into. So that's just some of my thoughts of what's coming up for me right now.
I agree with you now.
And then like really defining them. Again, y'all,
I feel it's like.
Go ahead, Connie.
I think pruning it down is important, what we're doing, but then it's like it's never going to be one thing, because to have the flexibility, not just to meet the environment, but we're all unique in our own ways, you know, like I also love what Danielle brought out is about having a definition, kind of what explains in a flexible way what kind of the difference is between maybe a sound performer and a sound therapist, or a therapist who uses sound in a flexible way, and that, but rather than trying to get like one exact term that can be used all the time.
So kind of like the web of different terms that are being utilized by practitioners, therapists, performers, artists, depending on
based on the role that they're playing or the environment that they're going into. And then I think that will also help us to create more educational opportunities for sound practitioners depending on that particular role. Because I think that there's a different level of education that needs to be put in place for a sound therapist versus maybe more of a sound performer. But then what are the things that a sound performer might need to know to just make sure that they're setting the container, you know, in that particular space?
Yeah, because I know in yoga that there's yoga therapy, but then there's yoga teachers, and the yoga therapists have to have a different certification level in order to go in to mental health or any type of hospital therapy spaces. And the yoga teachers would not have that same amount of education.
We're on the money here, Andrea. It's that kind of definition that I think could help add like more maturity to the field, and like distinctions, like almost sort of to be a sound therapist, you need to have a certain amount of hours training, that kind of thing. Like defining that might be a good, useful thing.
That's what they have.
I think that would be great.
That's what they have in massage school. So I think at like the 300 hour, the 500 hour, the 1,000 hour certification programs, you have different distinctions for.
Is that sweet and sour sauce?
Yes.
What you know, kind of what is your qualification in that sense. So, but then I think that's also, but then you also have to start looking at the governance of that, you know, because like for instance within like massage therapy, you have the CAM, like it's literally the whole governing board of how they instruct everything within California. So it's
like the CE boards for continuing education.
Yeah, exactly.
Board as well.
So it's like there's, you know, just in the same way that the yoga, or that yoga has the Yoga Alliance, you know, they have their specific distinctions of like, okay, cool, if you have 300 hours, you're this specific type of teacher. If you're 500 hours, you have this. If you're at 1,000 hours, you have that. So it's like, you know, that contributing aspect, you know, I think when you're talking about the Sound Alliance, you have to start looking into, is it going to be something that is just regional and statewide, or is this more of something that's actually national, or like within the global sphere? Because then you're going to start hitting up, you know, because like for instance, with massage school, there are 2 national tests that you can take that you can that kind of diversifies your ability to then go from state to state. Like you can take a certain test and only be able to do work in California. You can take the MBLEX, and then you can take the other test that allows you to go, that transfers your certification, that if you move to, say, Ohio, you can go and work there and you don't have any problems, like getting work and all that kind of stuff. So these are more finer points around logistics, and kind of procedural points, but these are just things that I would throw out there as consideration.
I think David is a good person to speak to on that, since of the globe. Danielle, haven't you finished didn't you do a course with, didn't you study under David? I'm doing the globe at the moment. What have you ended up with at the end of that? The certification at the end of that?
I took a certification with him. I don't know how the program has transformed since I went.
I mean, I'm on it now. I'm studying under the Globe Institute, and there's definitely an accreditation. It's to do with the government. So there is a body. I mean, David's actually done that. Basically, he's managed to create that kind of affiliation.
Yeah.
And then to speak to that too, the other component around this is the interesting thing I have around the sound healing certifications, because this is, don't anybody take this wrong. At the end of the day, most people who are going to come to you for sound healing are not going to care if you have a certification or not. They're going to care about whether you actually know how to hold a container. And that's not to say that a certification isn't important or that it doesn't teach you things. So that's not what I'm speaking to. But what I am speaking to is that it's less about the people who go for the certifications and more about the facilities that are going to require that you do or do not have them. And this is where a certain aspect of the culture has to change, because from a certain perspective, you could have somebody who doesn't have a certification, who's like amazing at what they do, but the facility will be like, no, you can't come perform here because you don't have it. So to kind of create a strong arm within this kind of like wild west of what we deal with in the sound healing world, is that we have to get more facilities either on board with having some level of scrutiny of who they're hiring to come do sound healing for them, or there has to be like a whole kind of like lateral change across the board that's streamlined perfectly, so that like the only way you can come perform is if you've done these specific certifications or gone through these specific things.
I think it speaks to what you're saying speaks to what Danielle said about having very clear definitions about what is what, because there's a very strong difference between actually doing a sound bath, performing with sound, and applying sound as medicine on somebody directly and actually healing someone. That would require a lot more knowledge, so I think it just speaks to having a very clear definition.
Well, I think that's also the other difficulty, Lucinda, is that in my experience, I've met people who are incredibly knowledgeable and have studied the nines in sound healing, and
but they can't do it,
and they're fucking shit. And then there's
okay, but then Shane, that speaks back to, it's like if you took any examination. I mean, this is about, again, I spoke about, remember, having a body, like an overarching body to give it credence. Then, you have a practical exam, like, your practical driving test, can you actually do this? You have to do a practical course. And maybe it's that, that what we're speaking to. But I get what you're saying, because it's so intuitive to a certain degree.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, because that, it's crazy to me, because I'm going to use myself as an example. I've had people who come to my sound baths and they'll sit with me and talk with me about stuff, and they're like, who taught you this? And I'm like, dude, I taught myself this. Like, everything I understand around sound, everything that I've gone through around it has been through my own innate knowledge, and through my research on the internet, and Google's a thing, and like all this kind of stuff. And then I'll sit with people who have gone through accreditations and certifications, and I'm like, and like they'll be like, oh, let me play a sound bath for you, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna let you into my field, like, and manipulate my field in this way, because like I can already tell by just the language that you use and the way that you talk about things, like you don't know what you're doing. And like this is where, from a certain perspective around the certification stuff, it's like a person could be certified, but that doesn't qualify you for the work. just to be honest.
And that's what's happening in the field that I see with like vibrational sound and like some of the other associations, that they're learning, but it's like they may not always have the innate gifts within it of, per se, awareness or awakening or healing for the other people, but they're learning it.
I definitely agree on that. And I think that that has to be part of the education of what does it mean to, you know, like doing your own personal work so that you can really hold that space for other people. And what does that mean? And what is it, you know, going into a process of teaching people what we're trying to do for the masses anyway, which is taking your own power back. And I think, like, what is the goal here? Because if the goal is to elevate the sound healing industry, then there's, I don't know, and I think there needs to be some form that, some part of it that's playing the game, kind of, per se, of like what is already in place so that we can change it. But I think that that's going to come from how we educate people in a certification program or some type of training, that it's not just about digging bowls. You know, how do we get practitioners to listen to energy and have having those energetic conversations and tapping into their intuition and source. I think we're all saying the same thing.
I had some thoughts to share, picking up on what each of you have shared, and Danielle in particular, about distinguishing between practitioner, facilitator, and performer as like three primary roles. And like, I agree with what you all have said about feeling like it's too narrow to make it one thing. But if sort of bring us back to that as our goal, it seems like we were trying to sort of find a way to talk about it that would be cohesive. It seems like the thing that does differentiate each of us from being a sound performer as in this container, is this responsibility for the impact on the user. So like the different performer and an artist, they might, some of the best sound healing experiences I've had are people who don't identify as sound healers, you know, like Tom York, for God's sake, you know? And he's just being authentic. He's being himself. And that is so healing, to be around someone who's connecting with their inner truth, you know? So, but he's not necessarily trained in building a container. And a container is what I think we're all committed to some degree. So facilitator, if we were to choose like a word or a role, a sound facilitator, someone who's facilitating an experience, includes this commitment to creating a container is something that just naturally would call to like have an education around, or have some sort of insights on how to do that, how to feel the energy of the people with you, how to sort of have this interest in mind. But then it leaves this like creative open space that it's not claiming to be a healing, or, you know, you don't have to have the certification to be a practitioner. Practitioners are included in being a facilitator. Everyone's sort of included, and seems related to this conversation. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but I just wanted to like see if I could integrate what we had shared.
Say we just make it simple. Sound dude, sound chick. That's it.
Yeah.
What
Way to get binary.
Sound dude. I'm just a sound dude. That's it.
Very binary, Shane. Yeah.
But rather interesting, Danielle, I'm sorry, I'm being really pedantic here, but just now when you were like talking and you were like on your flow, you went, for those of us in the sound healing industry, so you were describing it using sound healing, so we're still going back to that word, you know what I mean? We can't help it, we keep going.
I feel it's like more of conditioned to say it, because that's a common language that we know.
I know.
But I don't call myself a sound healer.
I know, but it's like, imagine saying that, like we're having this conversation with a group of civilians. I like calling people civilians.
Let's just call ourselves sound witches and wizards.
Yes.
Easy.
But it's like finding that word.
There it is, we nailed it.
Every time we say alliance, sound alliance, I feel like I'm in a Star Wars movie, and I am. Okay.
Galactic Federation.
I love alliance. I love it. I feel like that's what we're
Sound Federation is the bigger.
The Galactic Federation of Sound.
You know, that was one point you were raising. Connie, I think it was you that was raising this about like, oh, Shane was talking about the scope of like, is this statewide? Is it national? You know, for us, like the way we think about the unified planet is, it's like a Russian doll's like fractal construct, which is it starts at a community level, and like ultimately communities will be able to, like different sound communities and sound practitioners will be able to join the Sound Alliance, the Unified Planet Sound Alliance, which is what gives its credibility as a, you know, as a planetary organization. So we're trying to get beyond traditional measures of like human-made, of like nation states, etc., and go to like these. Sound is a universal. It's actually, sound isn't, it goes beyond the planet, right? And so thinking about it from that perspective of like, as a unified planet sound alliance, how can we think about ways to bring structure and common agreements in place around like the science of the science of sound, and these terminologies. Like one of the things I've been over the last decade, I mentioned this, I've been under the hood of at least 1,000 social change communities, and more often than not, you know, a significant chunk of them, one of the main projects is common language. Because to be part of a community, like the common language piece is often where it begins to like, when we're talking about communities, as a way of maturing the, you know, what you described, Danielle, as the sound healing industry. As a way to mature that, we need to think about what language are we using, and like how can we be intentional within our words to be both accurate and effective. So like, when we think about that, I love us to call each other sound wizards and witches. Joshua describes sound.
And bitches.
Yeah.
Bitches. Sorry.
Witches.
So listen, I love that, and you have an amazing use of I love hearing you talk. It's like hearing a sound bowl, really. So can you just name a few things that you feel like this the sound vibrational world is missing, that's in those social change containers that they more have with the unifying language that we don't have?
Well,
I don't know if that makes sense.
That is a great question. I'm not the subject matter expert in sound. I'm a deep group.
Right, but some of the things that you see in those social change communities, like as an example.
So speaking, what was coming up for me as I was listening is just that there is a lack of definition, and there's a lack of structure, and you know, kind of like as a space, as a sector, as an industry, it's relatively like it's relatively nascent in its own maturity. Like, you know, you wouldn't dream of like calling yourself an architect unless you've been through architecture school and you got certified as an architect, etc. Like, you know, so like that question of like, how can we bring that structure so that the language people are using, that seems to me that's extremely valuable. And by the sounds of things, there isn't a body that people, that sound practitioners, sound artists, sound healers, you know, so on and so forth, that belong to, as like an association, as like a you know, as like there's associations for so many different things. I'm sure there's bodies that exist, but this is exactly where this kind of like unified planet sound alliance can play a role in saying like anyone can join the alliance, and that's how the game propagates, right? Is like the alliance creates structures that brings more players into it, and then in doing so, like layer on everything else, layer on food and community and everything else, and suddenly you've got an incredible engine.
And also, oh sorry.
Go ahead.
And also from like an alliance standpoint, like most people join alliances because they're able to get discounting on like insurance, other products that are available through the alliance, or even creating like a syndicate program for sound healers for their liability, general liability, workers' compensation that they can buy through the alliance as well. So it's like there's a business model that is on top of a lot of alliances for different.
And that's where, Andrea, exactly. Those alliances often are kind of like they're sort of somewhat old worlds, you know, from kind of like Rotary Club into, you know, Masons, etc. So the question is, how do we reimagine that at a planetary scale and do things that would offer value to this as a space, as a sector, the Sound Alliance can think about? So if it's like health insurance, for example, like as we bring in more and more alliances around, you know, we're going to be doing 26 of these a year. Every 2 weeks, we bring in a new topic. And so there's going to be, by the end of a year from now, there's going to be 26 different alliances formed around these different pillars of society. You know, it makes sense that we could go and do a deal with an insurance company to offer like peer-to-peer insurance and offer like across the board all sound practitioners that join the Sound Alliance access to healthcare benefits.
Yeah,
you know, that kind of thing.
I've done programs like that, like creating alliance syndicates being utilized within different modalities in healthcare and like in-home care markets. So there's like, it's totally doable because it's just having the right underwriting language in order to get it covered for the bigger scales.
And so these can become things where we think about, as a Sound Alliance, what projects do we want to tackle? Like on Friday when we're presenting, I think it's at 11 a.m. on Friday, we've got 30 minutes to present what are the outcomes of our conversation this week to everybody that wasn't able to join the guild or the alliance, to go and say, hey, this is the collective sprout, and this is what we would like to have when we go into Blossom. And these are the additional skills, additional resources we'd like to invite in once we get to Blossom. Like when we're presenting that, you know, we can go and say, okay, the first thing we're picking off is the Science of Sound Matrix. And it's the first project of that is languaging. We're going to come up with the structures and the recommendations in place. And like that might be, you know, that could introduce the topic of certification in there. And then we can think about other areas we want to bring in, but that we can look to other industries and look at how they've matured and what role alliances or associations have played in maturing those sectors. This is like common practice, and it makes total sense that this could be created for around sound. And actually, frankly, it's kind of surprising that it doesn't exist, or if it does exist, that it hasn't reached any kind of, you know, like.
It's kind of put together with many other different modalities right now. I know from the risk management side, like the sound heal or sound, you know, however we want to call it, gets put in with breath work, with yoga. Like there's not just a sound version of it, because I don't think it hasn't had the amount of people within it in order to create that. They just have it molded in.
We do now, and let's go to ancient civilizations and be inspired.
Yeah.
I very much doubt the Egyptians. If you were playing sound for one of the pharaohs, I very much like you probably came from a long line of sound operators.
So real quick, everyone, since I performed in August in a pyramid at Burning Man, I connected with someone who was an audience member, asked me to come to Costa Rica, where they have 80 acres of land that they're turning into a sound healing retreat center. And so building venues that support different kinds of work, crystal bowls, and instruments, and also just like multi-sensory experiences, also just like different combinations of things that are basically very open. It's a slow building process, but as an Sorry, it's someone's microphone is on. But as an example of communities are actually emerging right now, that would be amazing venues for an alliance like us to be able to form a partnership with, and to be able to like actually, yeah. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I feel like I might as well share that with you all, that that this is more than just like a hot topic right now, but there's other serendipitous organizations that are sort of emerging that would be excellent allies to like bring the work that we do into like physical reality as well.
Oh, two things. One, Amanda, I was there when you performed in the pyramid, and you like amazing. I've got the video. And secondly is, feel free, as co-founders of this game, founding players, feel free to, you know, take initiative there and go and identify those other organizations that could be invited into being founding members of the Sound Alliance, and saying, hey, we're doing this, it's got momentum, it's got some initial people, and we're on this journey, and invite them to be part of this journey into the harvest. And by that time, you know, what do we need from a funding perspective at the harvest stage? Like, what are the first low-hanging pieces of fruit that we want to tackle as an alliance? And that might be just building partnerships with pre-existing projects that can immediately bring solutions to the market.
I just want to let you know that I'm very friendly with like Chief. He's got a really cool title. I think it's like Chief Sound Curator or something at Pandora. I can't remember his title.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's a super cool title. I'm like, I hope one day to have that title. Anyway, and then it was through him, his name's Steve, and I reached out to him yesterday, and they are really, really aligned with us, like Pandora, like through him, through like sound and innovation with sound. So I think they'd be a really good partner, and obviously we have that contact. And it was like through them that I met Sense Sounds. I can't remember her name. She's a very cool Japanese lady, and she's the one doing really cool stuff in hospitals. That she did a project in changing the sound of machines, which is very long-winded and ongoing. But I just thought I'd bring that up, that I think they might be a really good partner, maybe even funder for some of our projects.
Lucinda, if you could, feel free to invite Stephen if he's available tomorrow or the next day, or definitely the Collective Sprout at 11 a.m. on Friday.
Okay, I think that's
a place to invite him.
Okay, great.
And anyone else for that matter that you think could be helpful, like that's going to be a bit of our show and tell. Interesting, I'm not a member of the Bohemian Club, but I've been before, and very like super old world version of what we're talking about, all men. And when I was there, I met the founder of Pandora, who immediately came up to me and was like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like it was kind of like a spot, you know, implant.
The odd one out.
Exactly, and they have a project. I think it's something like the Sound Genome, that have now become like something like the Impact Genome Project, which is all about like taking Pandora's recommendation engine and looking at how it can be made, how it can be applied to other. Like how we utilize capital to maximize impact. And so there's a big there in that whole AI technology piece. So let's like bring that in. I'll take a look and see. I'm forgetting the founder's name, but I've got an email with him, so I can see if he can join as well on Friday.
About time to transition to the next guild, I think.
Yeah. What time?
2:30.
Yeah.
It's 2:30.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for shepherding us through this.
Thank you everything for showing up.
And this has got so good energy. Does everyone feel it?
I do.
I do. I think we should end with toning just for 15 seconds.
Let's do that. Yeah.
What? Amanda's just gonna sing for us?
No, we're gonna tone together, but I can guide it if anyone, unless someone else wants to. I'm happy.
That'd be great.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can see all of you at the same time. All right, so let's see. Let's take like a couple minutes in case anyone has to go. So we'll take 3 deep breaths and basically enter into a field of trust. The energy feels amazing. I feel like pouring our love into the possibilities that have emerged today. Will sprout. Will sprout beautiful blossoms of a sort of shared reality. So when we tone, we can bring that feeling to the sound, whatever feeling is true for you. And we'll do, let's see, how about like an O vowel first to kind of ground and anchor into this feeling. And then we'll bring our attention more to the heart and sing an awe together and kind of open up to the infinite possibilities and also the connection that we feel. And then an ooh at the end, which is like kind of directing out that positive energy in whatever area that you want of your life, but also towards each other. Okay, so 3 deep breaths and then an O together and the same pitch. We'll sing, and I'll sing it first and you guys try and just align to the same pitch, and then an ah, and then an ooh. We can actually branch out to the harmony that feels right for you. Okay?
Amanda, should we mute or not mute?
I would say that if you have a lot of background noise, if you can just not mute, maybe, actually, no, let's just all not mute. And we'll sort of tune out the background noise in our own, ability to do so. Okay, so everyone take 3 deep breaths together. And exhale. 3rd breath, inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Let's do that one more time, singing O to ground. Now singing Ah, opening our hearts. Now singing ooh and finding your own harmony.
May we think kind thoughts, may we speak kind words, may we be kind to ourselves and kind to others.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yummy, yummy.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Andrea. Really appreciate all of you, and feel free to stay on. Welcome, Serena. Welcome.
Hi. Sorry about my tardiness.
The beauty of having collisions of the best kind. Make sure they're not in those 2 people driving.
So yeah, we just transitioning here. So we've just had the most beautiful deep dive into definition, terminology, like how we can accreditation, benefits that can come from the Unified Planet Sound Alliance, and so we're gonna continue that conversation in tomorrow. Feel free to sit with anything that was said. I'll share the video recording with everybody again, and then we're going to be doing the collective sprout on Friday. Thank you so much. We are off to a flying start with food this morning, and now it feels so good. It's happening. So over to you, Serena. Thank you so much for being here. And Shane, I saw you just jumped off. Shane's been with us. Shane is very excited for Shane to share with you Sound Helix on Friday, which is just awesome as well. But over to you, Serena and Emil. Thank you again.
Yeah, so hi guys. Hi Mark. How you doing? You there with us?
Danielle, are you staying on for this call?
Video is not on.
Awesome. And Dominic's probably still coming.
Yeah. So actually, Dominic emailed me. He and I we're gonna have a one-off sometime later today or before our call tomorrow. He's unable to make it, and Emil and Lucian, I just sent you kind of a Google Doc that's just a brain dump, and I'm going to send it to everyone else as well, so we can all kind of begin to align with our concept and our ideas. I'm just getting it shared. I'm sorry, what?
The Google Doc?
It's a Google Doc, and what I thought would be the best way to, just as people might be coming into the project or not being able to make every meeting, is kind of have every day we have a little bit of a brain dump where we're then able to work off of it and create more concepts. So I'm a little pressed for time personally, so I wasn't able to like fully write out sentences. So I actually drew a picture, and I'm hoping that that kind of serves as a way for us to begin to create some more, presentable ideas.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to share this with everyone. Bear with me. My computer is going so slow.
You go ahead and keep working on sharing, and I'll download to people a bit more of what we discussed yesterday.
Please do. Thank you so much.
So the two ideas we feel ourselves leaning into the strongest and clearest are one, and there's multiple aspects of each one, but the two main ideas are one, the mobile sound environment, which can have kind of programmed music or instruments and installations. And the other major project idea is around sound playgrounds and setting up permanent environments in a public or public spaces to Lucinda needs to request access for the doc. So you see that, I'm sure.
Yeah, sorry guys, it's just going super slow.
So the mobile units that can be brought to offices, museums, parks, and then the structures or the kind of installation that could live permanently at a park or in a public space. The idea within the playground is that there are instruments that are tuned to work with each other and in near proximity and are fixed so that anyone, adults and kids, can play with them and get a sense of connecting with music just with themselves or even with random other people or with groups of people that they know. We started writing out talking about and writing out some of the features we would need and some of the steps to get there. A lot of permits would definitely be needed for the sound playground in a public space. We need to design that, and also talking about what sponsors might be interested in providing things like instruments or design, that would also, you know, be a kind of promotion for them, because there's things like chimes and instruments that can be built, which certain companies are already aware of how to produce. And same goes for the Airstream movable unit. Who can we reach out to as a sponsor that would, you know, get some promotional benefit and also feel they are contributing to the commons in this? So both of these would be focused around experience as well as education. And we want to start delegating different aspects for people to look into for by the end of this week to have ready to present for Friday, so we can move into the next phase in the next week. So any questions, comments, thoughts? Andrea, Lucinda, Danielle, I know you weren't here yesterday, so that might be a lot for you to connect to right now, and Shane, but you guys were here over the last the 2 weeks before. So yeah, so this was all in the field a little bit. Or Savannah House, anything?
Yeah, Emil, as an offering here, I have a trailer. I just put the link in there. It's a tab trailer. And Mark, this is super interesting as well with your 31-foot Airstream. But we have the trailer is currently at Mushroom Farm, and it's this beautiful like bubble of a trailer called Pegasus. It's actually the world's first self-driving RV, in that I put a hitch on the back of my Tesla, and it's a self-driving Tesla, which means it's the first road legal self-driving RV. TARDIS, the time-traveling Tesla, and the Pegasus, the trailer. All that being said, what we could do is bring that trailer, the Pegasus, we could bring it back from Mushroom Farm and park it in the front of our house on Alamo Square and turn it into a sound portal and like decorate it and like make it open for people to come in and experience, like basically make it like a city art project in front of Savannah House. So that could be something we could do as a prototype project.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea and a good way to bring the energy into, like, you know, literally you're extending Savannah House out into the commons right there.
We call it front space. There's a whole
we'll tell that story another time.
We'll tell that story another time, but it's like but that could be part of like what we're doing with these festivals, and like, but with Burning Man, we're creating the Omniverse, which is this 8-day festival. So we could have this as a project that is very doable, because I'd be happy to accept stars for the trailer. So,
yeah, so that brings us up into one other thing, is that Serena's already, she found an old
oh yeah, let me add that to the doc. I think I texted you, right?
Yeah, a layout of some estimates on costs for producing the mobile unit, and it's a really good place for us to start, and then we can see what we can already source from each other too.
Yeah,
like,
because there's a critical mass of us in San Francisco, and like anything with a tow can pull this little trailer, just a regular car. So, you know, that means like people like Mark and Serena, you could basically take this Unified Planet Sound Portal and take it and we'll take it to Burning Man, and we you know, when Burning Man opens, but it could become a very quick thing, and it could be part of a whole fleet of them, that you know, we could have the intention would be like every city would have a moving sound portal, and like start super small, because it's very achievable, this.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you brought that up, because you know, some of the brain dump that I put down yesterday was kind of this sense of urgency around creating action versus like creating this plan that we're like gonna propose and get funding, and it's all great, but there's this also kind of immediate sense of like needing to like spread the message and actually be a game within the game of our own testing and what happens, right, when we kind of just drive to the Palace of Fine Arts or Lake Merritt, and they see this Pegasus or whatever it is, and what that does and the response. And so I'm really excited that you say this, because I think the faster that we can really build a minimum viable product of what this could look like from a scalable perspective, the faster we can actually get the results, the testing, the funding, and kind of the deeper gray matter that we're all predicting will happen versus it actually being experienced and us getting that kind of real-time feedback. So yesterday, Mark was kind of talking about this from that perspective of like, how can we like take action like now instead of, you know, all these hurdles? And we kind of also talked about, you know, that the fact that there actually really isn't that many barriers to creating a project and making it come alive, because we're not working with this huge corporation where there's levels of approval and like, you know, needing 15 people to say yes before we do something. So kind of just with that understanding that we can act now. And Andrea is saying something about a sound scavenger hunt. I would love to hear what you are bringing up there.
I don't know, because I keep on bringing up like kids like trying to get into sound and like the education. So it's like having like you're looking at this modular sound, but it's like different parts of the city have different, you know, you got to go to this place and this place, but it might be a smaller space to have sound available, or different types of sound healings, or not sound, I'm trying not to use the word.
Yeah, it's all good.
Sound performance, artistry, but it's like, so they get different unique flavors of sound in a way that, you know, they might be like, oh my God, I want to go here, or I want to go here, or, you know, but at the end of the time they get all these like stars, or they get all these little sound gifts at the end. And it's like, they come away with like a little flute, or they come away with like some little thing that they can use for themselves for, you know, their own way. So I'm around like a lot of kids lately. So it's just been kind of coming up like, how do you get sound involved in a way that is fun, but then they're also getting what they need?
That's beautiful. And it's bringing me back to this vision of, has anybody ever been around Press Club in San Francisco, where that Pete's Coffee is around 4th Street on Market? And if you guys have seen, they have these little art installations that are actually sound installations, and you can sit inside of them, and I forget what it is, if it's a chime or a horn, but there's actually an immersive experience sitting right on Market Street where someone can go in and interact with it. I don't know if it's any longer there, but I loved that, because people were just stopping, and whether it was a kid or an adult, there was this like sense of play around it. And that's what I think we're trying to infuse more. And with this concept of having it like spread out, and then also having maybe one large kind of city block that's like a full playground with several art installations that are all musically scalared to be in harmony with each other, it gives the invitation of playing with other people through this as well. And a sound healer could go in there and very well orchestrate something with other healers and have it be this other dimension of a concert where you can not only receive, but you can also play. So I really like that idea. And I love the idea of kind of gamifying it, like Lucian was talking about, in terms of a Pokemon, you know, kind of energy with it, but more healthy and that kind of thing.
I'd like to ask you a question, Lucian. How large is your trailer truck thing?
I sent a link to it. It's you can fit. It's a double bed with a kitchen. So the whole thing could be designed actually as like, because I don't really care for the kitchen that much, so we could design the whole thing to be like a sound studio. But it's got a table and like 2 seating areas that fit like 4 people, 6 if you would really squeeze them in. But like in its current structure, but they're kind of modular designs, so you could design it to be. And one of our dear friends, Seth Quest, like loves that kind of thing. So, you know, we could turn it into like a futuristic portal.
I think we need to come back to the like what we fixed up on yesterday to do with content and programming. Obviously, the space that one is in will define what one can experience within that space. I think that, you know, taking like as an overarching theme of having these mobile units, that's called the mobile units. I think we want to remember that we are not just about sound play, with it being about sound play, because you can go into a playground and play with sound as a kid. You can go to an art installation thing and play with sound. I think our mission is to inform people and educate people along with that. And I think that depending on, eventually we can reach a point where we have the sound experience bus, the sound immersion bus. I'm calling it a bus because I'm British. And then like the sound play bus. But ultimately, I think that to start with, let's say with this unit that you have, even if it's not yours, Lucian, and we find a partner, we can get a massive trailer or whatever it is. I think it's a journey, and I like the idea. And obviously our minds get really stimulated when we think about kids, but it's equally as important to have the people experience chaotic, dissonant, discordant sound. So they understand the positives and the negative effects of sound when they're on this journey. If it's that we're doing, that's a very different thing to one of my ideas, Scape, which is all about that immersive, just entertaining experience. I like the idea of people playing with sound, but also them taking them on a journey where you have that exploration, that play, that education, that thoughtfulness, that mindfulness. So it's this overall stimulation, which brings us back to, you know, let's think about a program that we can initiate within one of these portals, whether it is your Airstream, whether it's Lucian's vehicle. I think it has to be large enough to get people in, you know, to get 4 or 5 people in through a journey. I like the idea of a journey, journey sound kind of thing.
And this is I'm so happy this conversation's happening, because it could, the scavenger hunt, you know, imagine that if in San Francisco we could have like locations where they were kind of hidden, and at each point you had to get the clue, you had to unlock the clue in that particular thing, which would be a particular sound frequency that would take you to the next location. That kind of thing would be, it's very achievable and kind of great fun, and could be a great way to create an immersive experience that will bring more people into the game. Kind of exactly what I was getting at, the sound portals, as the way I see them, are like, they're essentially up game portals, like places where people can play the game and have experiences of sound, and then in time they could also be used for you know, education around food, around community, and around, you know, and you can access, they become like mobile you know, mobile game sites essentially. So that like, as we're thinking about this, we can think about what is the experience design and the culture and the rituals that we might want to introduce to these kind of experiences. And by no means, you know, I'm just putting it out there because it's a very easy decision for me to make, to be like, I have a trailer, the trailer. But Mark has a 31 for Airstream, you know, that could be, you know, we need to figure out what you're prepared to do with that. But it's got all the hallmarks of a great game emerging.
Yeah, and real quickly, thanks for that download, Lucian. I wanted to say that this little image I drew with kind of my mapping of my mind is more for us being able to illustrate in a proper business proposal the different use cases that this mobile unit could be used for. So whatever we create as our minimum viable product right now, the content, Lucinda, which is very important, can be something that we can, you know, adjust and alter as we go through this journey that you're talking about. And my point is that if we're going to be going for funding, like Lucian mentioned, in this stackable way, we want to be able to show in a document of some sort or in some kind of professional demeanor why this money can be allocated and where, and what that's really going to cost if we did have multiple use cases of this unit. So that's kind of where that's coming from. And the same thing for the city block, right? So playing off of Andrea's idea about installations around the city and then having one large piece of land, like what does that really all amalgamate to in terms of that stackable funding that we're kind of looking at the higher level? So, you know, this, like I said, this is not like certainly not anything we have to do, but this is just kind of a way to bring everyone together and figure out what we can appropriate and what we can get as a way to present this information for a funder by the end of the week.
Yeah, I think it's really like Lucinda says, well, experience first too. Like, let's really aim our focus towards what is the experience itself going to be, and I think the container and everything else can work itself out off of what we want from the experience.
Yeah, definitely.
If we're doing an overarching, like, I love your scavenger hunt idea. That seems to me to be like a way to include all of these ideas, like Lucian's saying, the different portals in different parts of the city, whatever. And also it presents a very large marketing PR campaign, you know, and that can bring in different sponsors, different brands. I mean, I just keep thinking, we're talking about raising money. Well, any investor that's going to invest wants to know what their ROI is. So, you know, what is the revenue stream for it? It is really about tickets and, you know, sponsorship and branding or whatever. But doing one sound portal, like outside Lucian's house, I see that more as like a non-profit thing, because, like, you know, unless we're taking that, what does that experience become when you park it outside Google? It's a different concept. We have it again, it comes down to programming and content and what that person needs. So maybe it's about coming up with those different solutions for each different case scenario.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that that's a great place to start, you know, having one of us kind of take that and go, okay, what does that really look like, and iterate on it. And much like, you know, this small sound portal that we might make and park out of Lucian's house, it gives us a way to like kind of test too, you know. So I wouldn't look at it as that it's a smaller scale of something, but more of a way that we can, you know, see what emerges through actually having the physical materials.
Mm.
I think it's also like when we look at portals, scavenger hunts, it's like bringing in the technology that like Shane is putting together, bulls, and having that be part of it. So it's like you're doing a win-win-win situation for all the projects as well. It's like the education, the portals, and the technology would all be within there, because it's like it's giving enough money to the system, and then you throw in sponsors and the revenue sources, and it's like creating more where they're actually wanting to buy products after that are available.
Indeed, and also the you know, like the Uber sound, the taxi sound bus with an advertising banner on top of it, getting your sponsorship on that.
I have a question, thought. So I hear what you're saying, Lucinda, about like what's the return on investment? Like, would this be parked somewhere and asking for like a ticket price to go in, that sort of thing? And something I hadn't thought of much yet, and I'm gonna let that kind of saturate. But then in relation to a sound playground or a public space, like that's gonna be, you know, in a park, something that's open to everyone. My curiosity, because I just don't know, like, who is it that funds those kinds of like similar to like a public art installation? Where does funding for that come from?
Andrea.
Like usually heritage services of the city. Like usually it's like people that are funding for hospital sculptures or anything like that. They're looking at ways of increasing coherence within the community. And so you're looking at like boards of, you know, they're from different corporations, but they're all like, okay, what are the projects that we want to do in order to create a cohesive, you know, longevity? Because they want, you know, sometimes they want their name on it, sometimes they don't, depending on it. So it's like having this available where it's like, okay, this is actually our way of giving back to the city as well. So like sound instruments or anything like that, they could be like, well, I'm giving $125,000 in order to put into this park space because I know that my grandkids are going to use this. So it's like, as long as they know that their legacy or longevity is there, you can get people more on board for this.
I think one thing to be aware of currently with the administration that we have right now, I don't know if any of you are aware of something called opportunity zones. and opportunity zones. If you are in an opportunity zone, i.e. if you're a community-based non-profit project affiliated with a larger, profit-making company in an op zone, it's much easier to get funding, and they're all around the country. And essentially, I know a lot about it because we are involved with that through a fund. But so that's another way to grandfather your way into maybe getting funding, like by, hopping on to another project in an op zone, especially for something that's a public facing thing, like a sound playground in a public space. That's one other way. It's just a bureaucratic loop to jump through potentially.
Got it. Okay.
That's something, Lucinda, that I've done a bit of research on opportunity zones, and I think it makes a lot of sense for the Unified Planet projects, particularly like mobile ones like this, to affiliate themselves with opportunity zones. Partly what we were thinking with Savannah House being a prototype planetary embassy. I spoke with the mayor of LA about he's just taken on this role of being kind of the president of what's called C40, which is this network of 40 largest cities in the world, to have these spaces, to have a planetary embassy in every city. What would happen if we could create a network of like all of the opportunity zones to have a sound portal, which could ultimately be like a unified game portal in these opportunity zones, and we would design ways to for play to integrate more community, and that's going to be that's going to be something that we can layer on as like physical infrastructure. All of the other guilds and alliances that are going to be meeting could access that physical infrastructure as a way to bring their message out to
I think I could definitely, what I'll do independently from this is introduce you to my husband, who runs an Opportunity Zone fund. And obviously there's just kind of bureaucracy surrounding it. You have to be, your NGO has to be registered, in a specific area. You have to meet certain criteria, but also in terms of like an investment prospect, in terms of raising funding, if this were to become something to do with an op zone, it becomes a very, very viable way of funding, because, it's delayed tax. It's like every dollar that you put in, you get a tax exempt. It's a very good thing for people in order to raise funding, but you have to meet the criteria. So I don't know too much about it, but definitely Andrew does. So that's a conversation that I could connect you on that.
Yeah, no, I think I've had a hunch since I first started learning about opportunity zones that they're going to be critical to the rollout of Unified Planet. And so just like how we think about that, we could start small, but like, let's have this as a thread within Portal's like wider strategy. And think that, one of the things we've kind of dived quite deep on is the CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, which can be tied to an opportunity zone, and through the foundation we can then raise a fund that could invest in the projects that come through the upgame.
Right, well, I'll make a separate introduction to you, to Andrew. Yeah.
Awesome. And that, like, imagine if rather than going out to external funders, that they can have a fund structure that they invest in, and that can then distribute. Again, like Emil, like we were discussing yesterday, sometimes way easier to ask for $50 million than it is $50,000. Once you start stacking all of the different solutions up, and people are like, okay, well, this is like serious systemic change in a package, I can pour money in and like watch the results come out.
Yeah.
Not a single company.
That's incredible, and that's why with the ideas we're developing, there's a lot of ways we can take it. Like originally, okay, like one mobile unit, but obviously there's so many different ways we could create mobile units, or even different programs. Like Lucinda, you're talking about programming, and that's will be a big part of it too. Like how specific are the the sounds or the vibrations or the experiences that go in, and how many different ones and how many different trailers do we have, and are some focused more on people connecting through sound with either instruments that are built into the structure or that they can pull out and easily use together. And go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, like, going back to Andrea's idea of the, you know, what's accessible to us now, what can we roll out right now, you know, like almost like as like, you know, the guinea pig, the rollout thing. Has anyone been to, once a year, does anyone know about Red Poppy Art House? I think I'm getting the name right. Has anyone heard of that in the Mission District you know it? Yeah, Danielle, yeah. And they do a really cool thing, a mini festival that's like a day or 2 days long every year, where people open up their houses and you wander along from this place to the next, having different experiences. And it's quite achievable. And I'm just thinking about, you know, this, just getting like the name out, the promotion out of like sound, you know, by doing that in different locations that aren't necessarily that we have to install, you know, one of the, you know, we could have like our you know, our flagship portal where we've, you know, installed like visual projected mapping. We've got like, you know, surround sound in there, and we have that experience that you step into. But we could also have like tents that you use in Burning Man, those shelter tents, to create like a globe or, you know, different things. And we could just have them all around town and just organize that in that way. It could be way more achievable, very doable. And like, I think we could make that happen quite easily, actually.
I think there's like the ways that you prepare a room. So if there's an office space that has a permanent room that they want to have this experience there available all the time, we can do that. There's an in-home experience that we can create. I think we want to be flexible with all of that, because that's what's going to make it grow the fastest. And people that have the mobile experience out of one of like prototypes, they're going to want, you know, companies are going to say we want this inside of our company. People privately will say we want this inside of our home. Like, I think we should be prepared as best we can to be able to create that experience in multiple different avenues.
And that's like, we have the community, I mean, particularly in the Bay Area. Mark has been doing this kind of thing for a long time. But, you know, for example, we've got 2 shift pods, tents that just pop up. Wouldn't it be cool if we just stuck a shift pod in front of City Hall when things open up, and just be like, have someone there giving like sound experiences, and that then leads you on to like, once you've figured it out, you go on to like Palace of Fine Arts, and there's a shift pod outside the front of that, and then you go on and you're like, you know, this, like, the game to propagate needs to create spectacles.
Yeah.
Like, epic spectacles, that people tell the story and like they have an experience where they go and tell all their friends. So the more we can think about layering in this into a whole experience design, where we're essentially kind of bringing Burning Man-like experiences to the default world, creating the grand player, and it's gifting as well. Like, there's all sorts of business models that can come associated with this once you start stacking the other things that could distribute through these portals. But you know, that the portals may go beyond, like, they may go beyond sound. They may be like fully, you know, they may be portals into the future kind of thing.
So we're talking about like, maybe, are we thinking about focusing right now on this scavenger hunt or festival type thing? Yeah, to bring it to the map.
The intention of our time as this guild is to narrow down into like what gives us charm. What do we feel like that's something I want to get done, because we don't have the execution. We as Savannah House can contribute where we can and can, you know, like try and connect dots, etc. But like the execution of this depends on like this as a group being kind of manifested. So like I think the important thing is what's like the low hanging fruit that we could start with, that could be like 1, 2, 3 physical like moving locations with a fleet. We can get as many shift pods as we want. You know, it would take 3 hours for us to probably get 50 shift pods.
Music connections. And we already have the tab, and so to me, again, I would like to put some focus back on the experience itself and really walking through. You know, I know we're getting closer to time now, but I want to really walk through that experience. And just I think in my own interest, because there's a lot of people out there that are doing this. There's a lot of like lay on this bed and it vibrates and you have sound and like put this on your eyes. I did one a couple weeks ago with like light therapy, sound and vibration. And I'm seeing a lot of different like ideations of this. And to me, that's a big clue that this is a thing. This kind of immersive experience is a thing. And it's just a matter of who's going to get it right and really have something pop off. And I feel very confident that this is a group that can actually do that. So I think really putting our focus on what that experience would be and looking at like Sound Self and Andromeda and some other ones that are doing these things to see what's working and what's not. Lucia Light, like we all have those contexts. Like let's really dive into that and come into that creation, and then putting it into a shift pod or putting it into a tab, putting it into an Airstream will all be, that's easy, I think.
Can I offer something to the conversation?
Please.
I think when you guys are talking about doing these types of satellite experiences, one particular model that you could look at, and granted, I know most of you are up in the SF area, Wisdom is a major thing. And the reason why I bring this up, and I'm going to play devil's advocate to this because one, I just like to poke buttons, and two, when it comes to the, I don't want to say lucrativeness of this, and not that it's all about generating profit, but even looking at the simplistic aspect of it in terms of sustainability and ensuring that, you know, anybody who is involved in it, whether it's through public funding or private funding, that it is maintainable. You know, the approach that Wisdom did was essentially, let's erect a festival that is consistent 24/7, all day, every day, in downtown on, I think, like, I don't even remember how big the lot is. It's like 20,000 square feet or something like that. And granted, what I'm going to share is a little bit like far reaching because of just the scope of what they did. But their burn rate is like around $200,000 a month. So when you're creating these satellite divisions, you know, around San Francisco, all this kind of stuff, yes, it's easy to maybe be able to possibly get the permitting for all these kind of things and all that kind of stuff. But to be able to, like, if you're running like full automation experiences out of them, then cool, you know, like then that's easier on everybody, because then, you know, like you don't have to have people to oversee it. But then realistically, you still need that, because you, like, if you have a structure or an environment like a Lucia Light, you know, like the equipment that we're using is incredibly expensive. You know, like to have people just coming around and banging on it, toying with it, you know, messing around with it, like, you know, there has to be some level of mitigation around the responsibility of it. And, you know, and the only reason why I bring these things up is because, you know, I've thought about this stuff for years because of like, I wanted, like, oh my God, it'd be so cool if there was like a place in the park that you can go to that has like all these installations that you can just go and mess with and like experience sound. The other piece I want to bring up too is that there is actually, and David Gibson would actually know this because he's friends with the guy. I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head. I'd have to go talk to a friend of mine who has some of his instruments, but he actually builds these installations. Like they're like huge, essentially like xylophones that he puts in parks, and then people can play with them and all this kind of stuff. I suppose another thing I would add to this conversation piece around these kind of mobile units is is bringing in the sound reference, because and one reason I bring this up is because one thing I've noticed over my years is that when people are given an installation or like given a space where it just has instruments that they go play in, that's what they see it as. They see it as play. And not that that's wrong, and not that people shouldn't have that opportunity, but more so that, does this work within the ethos of sound reverence? Because then these people are just going to kind of come into it and just be like, oh, bong, 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 ding, 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 cool, whatever, this was awesome. there are, I think, certain structures that we would have to create within them to ensure that not that people can't just come play with them, but that they understand what is happening in this space and how important it is that they understand that. Because it's not just like, these are toys. They're not toys. Like, they just aren't, you know, and being able to ensure that, you know, like, these are sacred tools, and you're not like, you know, because nobody would just come up into a shaman's playground and be like, and just grab their, you know, grab their stuff and be like, oh yeah, look at all this stuff. This is cool. You know, like, you'd be thrown out of the circle like very quickly because of your irreverence. So, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I know how people are. I know how people are. And a lot of people who
we did just talk about that earlier, about, I think it just comes back around to what we want to achieve and what the programming is, and what the actual physical space will permit, you know, and ultimately that's one aspect of this. And then the other aspect is like looking at the funding, and you're totally right about Wisdom. By the way, yeah, it's a losing business. It's probably going to go under in this time right now. And part of the reason why, Shane, it didn't work, Wisdom, is because you know, what it was offering wasn't groundbreaking enough, and you know, the content wasn't good enough, frankly, you know, in Wisdom. But I just think it comes back around to that, and you are totally right about what you say about the sound reverence. We are not just about sound play. But if we get to the point where one of our portals is about sound play, then it's about play. It's about going in and playing and like triggering stuff with your feet and touching the walls. And, you know, that's a part of that experience. But if one unit can have sound play, the understanding of sound, sound experience, and the immersiveness and the education in, you know, one whole unit, then we're starting to bring it back around to who we are and what we care about in some way.
I agree, and I think that there's a way to guide that sense of play in different ways as well, and it's how we communicate that through the project.
One opportunity, just following an intuition. Joshua just said Wisdom's gone under, and Lyle, a dear mutual friend, knows the creators of it. Just wondering. Could potentially, like, if we could get that on like 20 cents on the dollar kind of thing, or, you know, whatever it might be, and find a place as a kind of unified planet playground to place in San Francisco and like experiment with this kind of stuff, like that's the kind of thing that we could propose at the end of this Sprout session, that we have like one track we're going down is we're going to go and see if we can find this and find the location. And
we have one dome on Market Street here.
One dome, they went bust as well.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I think the key here is, when it comes to me, is mobility.
Yeah. Yes, mobility is incredibly crucial, because the problem with having a permanent space is that now you literally have to bring everybody to it, and this is the hardest part, especially within.
Mobility's big, and Lucinda hit on it. It's content. It was Wisdom.
Well, even if, but that's part of it too, is that even if you have the content, that's no guarantee. There's no guarantee.
Well, I mean, in my original idea for these pods that I had, I wanted to integrate, I basically saw it as, I think people's time is very precious these days. So I saw it as 15-minute shows, 20-minute shows, 8 people in a pod, ticketed events, use an app, you know, well designed with a different architect, a good architect that understands public spacing as well. Where you go in, you unlock a code with your phone, and you are allowed it that way. And then really it's just ticketed events. It's just ticketed 20 minutes. You've picked your program as a variety of programs, and that's how you get in. And then that's a revenue generator. And then you've got companies sponsoring as well. You know, that can have their own programs in it. Companies on the outside sponsoring. I mean, I really thought it through in that respect, and I think you're right. And I saw that being in every city, you know, not really just one specific location. You've got regulations, you've got fees. There's a lot that you have to take into a thing.
Yeah, the challenge with brick and mortars is very much what we're seeing right now. Look at all the yoga studios. Look at all of the spaces that are brick and mortar. They're about to go under. because of situations like what we're dealing with.
So
and this is where, sorry, go ahead, Lucian.
No, I think you're making a great point there, Shane. And so the question is, as you're making this point, is how can we as Unified Planet Sound Portal Guild, like how can we think about ways where we could offer, like a la soundscaping, like offer yoga studios essentially a business model that they can tap into. And that does several things. It brings more players into the game. It brings more people in to experience transformative sound. It offers these yoga studios or these spaces an additional business model. And we're using pre-existing infrastructure. And then we could create, I could see like Wisdom being a, unified planet playground. And like every city, and we partner with city mayors to go and say, we want to create this space of creativity where we're reimagining the future, and we create all these immersive experiences, and we take people on, like they're the modern temples, they're like, we're going to take people on a rite of passage in a way that Wisdom could never do, because it was providing one piece of the experience. But as we layer on like the whole Unified Planet experience, and we say like, you come in, you take the oath, you sign up to be a player, you can learn about all these different aspects, it becomes like physical infrastructure that could totally move. It could move around like Cirque du Soleil. One thing I was gonna suggest to Guy, who started Cirque du Soleil, to do a 2030 Unified Planet circus. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could create a collaboration with Cirque du Soleil to create a moving circus kind of thing using these like sound portals that like David's already like created a whole like incredible experience of this kind of thing. Like he's already designed it all. So there's a lot of pieces in here. Again, what is it? Rule number 2: leave behind limiting beliefs. And 3: let the greatest story win. So like if we start with anything is possible, that we're in a rapid acceleration where like if we can think it, we can do it. If we can imagine it, we can create it. But let's start with, as we go on Friday, as we go to our Sprout presentation on Friday, this is where we're starting. These are our prototypes, and then we can go and talk to the bigger picture vision of like, and we would like to have one of these playgrounds, which is the theme park of 2030. We want to have one in every city in the world and in economic opportunity zones, and here's the model. And like, we're just beginning to see what this could be. Because once one city's got it, like we could partner with city mayors as a distribution. And that's again, Mayor Garcetti from LA, like, could be a perfect partner to go and say, here's the prototype in San Francisco, let's roll it out with his partnership with all these other city mayors. You can see how that could very quickly scale once you've got the model up and running.
I think the only challenge with having brick and mortars is the law of diminishing return. And if anybody here is not familiar with the law of diminishing return, is we all know it. It's when if you eat chocolate and then keep eating it, the value of it slowly diminishes over time, and that you don't get the same kind of like intake from it. Mm-hmm. And this is like the challenging part, I think, within creating brick and mortars.
That assumes a not evolving space, though. Like the chocolate doesn't change if you eat a better bar of chocolate.
True. And yes, the facility could evolve, but that is also difficult too to build within the programming, because when the structure itself is already erected, then if it has self-moving parts, that's one thing. But if in terms of the structure can change and manipulate and all this kind of stuff, and then because then what it ultimately falls down to is the content. But then even the content itself is a variable that is an unknown because of like Wisdom, for instance. Like I've done my fair share of events there in terms of like facilitation, and it's always like it's always a guess, because it's like and especially now within the immediacy of our experiences, and I know Mark can speak to this, I know Lucian can probably speak to this in terms of throwing events at Savannah House. We don't know until 3 days before the event happens how many people are even coming. And most likely, we don't even know until the 12 hours before the event's going to happen. And this is like the major challenge I've seen in studio space after studio space after studio space of throwing events, where it's like you can do, and this was like the weird thing for me, like when I would do events here in California, in LA, San Francisco, wherever, we could do like a month's worth of marketing and we have no tickets sold. 5 days before, everything gets sold. And so it's like this weird kind of immediacy of playing with the community now, because most people, realistically, most people don't know where they're going to eat, shit, or pray at the start of their day. For them to make commitments of where they're going to be, you know, is like a whole nother process. So
I think there's really clear challenges that we can learn from, like how do we start small as a guild and starting it achievable. And so just go, like, would love to, you know, we can dream of these soundscape playgrounds that, you know, I think are actually not that far. I would predict within a year we'll have something bigger than Wisdom in more than one city, but let's see what happens. But
and as a disclaimer, my bringing all this up is not because I'm not in support of this.
Totally.
My throwing this out there is just more of my
devil's advocate on every team.
And I want to speak to something you said, because now I get more where you're coming from about like when you put it up, like it's initially really powerful and entertaining, but then maybe like people not exactly get bored of it. But I think that's the beauty of having a prototype in like a city like San Francisco, that we see like what really appeals to people. If there's 10 to 15 different instruments and like the spacing of them matters, the scales, what instruments see what catches, and then in other places there can be adjustments and modifications made. So it's the prototype evolves, of course, as it goes to different places, and could also be dependent on different cities, because one super beautiful thing that kind of connects to like the reverence as well is that music and sound and instruments are such a cultural quality. So where the kind of sound playground you put up in like Atlanta or New Orleans would be totally different from the one in San Francisco or Oregon, and can be based off cultural preferences and interests, another way to bring people together over the sound that, you know, resonates in their soul, so to speak.
I think community involvement, especially as you're mentioning, Emil, like that I think will be crucial to like getting the communities to have an emotional investment into it, because it's like, what instruments do you want to see there? Like, because some people might be like, yeah, I want bongos, or like, you know, I want a djembe, or like, you know, I want a harp, or like you know, like all this kind of stuff. And then, you know,
I think the right approach or the philosophy to look at is to take it back to the person having the experience. What experience do I want to have in one of these environments? And ultimately, if you think about going to the movies or watching a film, why do you come out of a film and think, oh, that was a great film? Or, you know, that really moved me. Ultimately, you want people to be moved. So we're talking about whatever we do, it has to be a journey for somebody. They have to go through a cathartic experience in order to come away and recommend it to somebody else, or talk about sound not healing, sound, whatever our terminology is these days, you know, that we're redefining. But prior to all of this as well, it comes back to a little bit what we're discussing with the Sound Alliance earlier in the council. It's about the conversation about unified vernacular, and it's about the general PR of this. Like, the first thing you start with is PR, the sound bites, excuse the pun, but the sound bites of what we're trying to do to get the awareness out there, you know. And I think that's the beginning of that as a movement, you know, per se, you know. And so it's just about experience, which anyone in events and, you know, in content creation knows how to achieve that, frankly.
Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that, Lucinda. And we are gonna like bow to you guys to continue as you like. We just do our group meditation now at 3:30 here. And we've been going since 11 a.m. again.
Has it really been since 11? Jeez.
Yeah, we had the food. The food is.
That's it? Just 11? I'm just kidding.
Food is like they're on a roll already. Please do continue. This is super exciting, and just encourage. And it's typically not me to encourage this, but just the pragmatism of like, where do we go within, like, how do we make sure that we get, as a group, we get something that not only is a win, but we can collectively hit the ball out the park. We can definitely deliver on, we can definitely raise the funding for, we can definitely get that first, like, hey, we did this, which could be like the first sound portal's a trailer like on prime real estate, which is like Alamo Square, on top of the well of the Ohlone people, the oldest gathering place in the whole of the Bay Area, at the house that birthed the Golden Gate Bridge. Pretty cool first.
Just a little story there.
You know? but you know, so that's there. And Mark, I would love for you to share that presentation you pinged me about. And we'll meet again tomorrow. But feel free to stay on as long as you like. We're gonna get our moment of stillness upstairs.
Much love, everybody.
Yeah,
enjoying the time with y'all.
See you tomorrow. Thank you so much, Serena. Thank you, Emil, for chirping. And I'll follow up with the link to this video and then with everybody. So
Well, before Mark goes, I just want to say thank you to Lucinda. She's leaving, and you know, Lucinda, I want to make sure that you are up to date with everything that happens in the next half an hour, 45 minutes. And I really want the document to kind of serve as the communication. And then if we need to have outside time out of that, go ahead and ping me. But I really want to like keep the containers of time. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of time on either end. So me and Emil are going to kind of tag team keeping up with it. And yes, download the document, edit it. This is for everyone. I just started it, and I'd really like this to evolve into where we can each do our brainstorms and figure out what we're going to own in terms of putting this all together individually, so we can make a good collective kind of effort. You can just press settings and it should download. And if you're on Google Docs, you should be able to edit it live with us.
And Serena, are you happy me sharing that as a document with everybody else?
Yeah, it's a brain dump. I don't consider it to be very professional, but yeah. Okay.
Let's not do that. Let's.
Okay.
Got till so Friday we'll be presenting the results of this brain dump into like, hey, here's what we've come up with as the next step. You know, here's like the vision, and we could take in the vision, like we could take in the images of Wisdom and say like we want to have one of these in every city in the world and in every economic opportunity zone, and that could be like a really tangible, okay, like people can see this and they can get excited by it. And then this is where we're starting with these mobile units and Mark, businesses that can help kind of prototype this as an offering, you know, awesome.
When it comes to the mobile units too, I was talking to Andrea about this yesterday. There's been a rise of these mobile units in New York, specifically just very simple, very easy, like almost kind of like Sprinter vans for meditation. And these might be models for you all to look into.
Kind of like food trucks sound.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, essentially. It's just the only thing I was speaking to with Andrea about this yesterday was more about like from the feasibility perspective of either being lucrative or sustainable, being able to fit a certain amount of people into it. That's going to be the big ticket.
I agree. And, you know, I think that all of us have like these concepts about the space, and I think it would be really good to have a brainstorm about, you know, what that would look like. Personally, keeping other sound out and having a really high quality sound inside is I think part of the reverence perspective that needs to be allocated. I just did add, this was from 4 years ago. I think I shared with a lot of people that this was kind of a broken dream that I kind of lost steam for. So I had a lot of this prepared and was pitching it and was getting traction, but unfortunately had to, change directions in my life. But I did kind of add a sample cost sheet just so that you guys could kind of iterate and ideate on everything that would go into this and what that looks like and what we can piece out from that and work together to come up with the collective vision of it. So like I said, I really want this document to be something that everyone contributes to. I personally don't have the time to make a perfect presentation, and we all need to kind of, figure out what we can all do to put it together. And that is the goal of this, to get something together by the end of the week with what we're going to be aligned with and how we're going to pitch it.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to leave
my drive.
It's going on. Thank you all so much.
Bye, Lucian.
Bye.
See you guys tomorrow.
Can someone tell me how I download this to my drive? Can I do that?
Can you make a copy of it? Lucinda, can you go to File and then make a copy? You'll go down and it'll say make a copy.
Yeah.
Say download.
Yeah.
I make a copy to my drive. Okay, thank you.
And then you can edit this live too and add in input, right? This way, it doesn't matter what time of day it is, we can all sync and tag each other on this as well. And it just serves as a way for us to communicate offline.
Thank you so much. Bye guys, have a really nice
Have a good day.
Lucinda, bye.
So Mark, we were going to give you, you wanted to share something, I think you were trying to share, and we'd love to hear from you. Dominic also said you had some amazing ideas yesterday, so would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think, there goes just dropped my phone. So just based off of, listening to, I love this popcorning of ideas and how bringing something to fruition, and that Lucian already has a trailer. That's awesome. So it'd be really easy, because I think since he's in the center of all this, we should probably look at building out his trailer first, which would be super simple. And but at the same time, it would be an option to do a variation of it, like with my Airstream as well. And I wasn't necessarily going to donate my Airstream, because unless, I mean, in all honesty, I could, if it would end up eventually being bought or paid for, because mine is so long. Wait, let me reframe that. My Airstream is so long, it's 31 feet. It's too big for me to travel with. So I want to short it down to like a 20-footer. That's more ideal for me. But it's a perfect solution for something like this. And the thing that Lucian was asking me to maybe elaborate on, I was trying to share something. And again, this is like about my 4th Zoom meeting. So I was trying to push something up as information, and it was a link to a virtual representation of there. Have you guys seen anywhere something called the Game Truck? The Game Truck.
Is it like the game? Like people are sitting in it like a gamer? Like
yeah.
E4 and like outside of LA when they do Comic-Con or any of those different things?
Right. Yeah. So a guy will pull up with the truck with the trailer on the back of it. And you walk into it, and it's got seating on one side that's staggered. It's there's lower and then upper, so kids can have like these Game Boys, and they've got multiple monitors on the opposite wall. So this could be a great experience for it's a great proof of concept. And it was interesting because I just searched it. I just typed in Game Truck, and I found one that's already for sale. These guys are starting to dump their businesses because maybe they just can't handle what it is. So it'd be real simple to actually just buy one of those. It's already set up. It's got sound in it. It's got video in it. So then I start thinking, well, now you can expand it to do a visual experience too, which is something I think that people were trying to talk about doing. But you could create, again, it's a proof of concept. It's already out there. Like literally, if you bought one of these things, you could set it up for the acoustic side or the auditory side of it, and then also include a video portion of it. And apparently Lucian liked the idea. And I was just thinking initially of just like, hey, here's already a proof of concept. We could kind of go and model after this. But also what's true is that a lot of equipment's coming up right now where you can buy stuff at, and it's going to get more and more increasingly available, pennies on the dollar. So where this gaming truck was maybe originally probably a $25,000 build out, you could probably buy it for $5,000 right now, which is fucking crazy. So those are things to look at instead of trying to, go buy one, build it out. Like I could see converting that thing really quickly if that's something that the guild wanted to put together. Because it would take some modification to take like my trailer and or Lucien's, I'm sure, to bring it in. But I don't want to get lost into how much we have to build out this stuff. I would just like to keep saying that I like guerrilla style, which means just come in and just do like the trailer, if it's mine or if it's Lucien's, or if we buy one or if one's purchased. I'd like to go to places and pull stuff out of the trailer, set it up there, pop-up style, do it, have some experiences, pack it all up, back up, and then go off to the next experience, or another location. And nowadays that, I think, is Shane still on the call?
He had to drop off.
He
He's been
dropped off, okay.
for a while.
So the brick and mortar part of it, we don't even need to be looking at buying into that right now, because there's going to be so many places available that we'll be able to utilize pre-existing businesses, or even places like I thought about what would be a great place to maybe conduct an experience at. And if there's do you guys see a visual component to this too? Okay.
Yes.
Why not go into some of these high-end theaters now, the ones that have the reclining seats and stuff like that, and you can have a sound fucking healing in there with visuals. They're laying empty right now. So the only hurdle is finding a way to, how quickly can we get in there, and what do you call it, to with respect to the distancing and stuff like that. I mean, they can do every other seat or whatever. I'm sure that's an option. But these sound healings, having conducted them, and I'm going to keep using sound healings because that's what they are, but I know you can't market them as such. I've actually, just FYI, my sound healing and postings and events that I've been doing for about 1.5 years have now all been blocked by Facebook. Facebook, because it said sound healing, they're going in and saying this image has been removed, They're fucking censoring. These are my old ones, like from last year. You got to look at them. That's how serious the censorship part of it has become. I'm just like, are you kidding? So for me, future marketing, and Shane knows this as well, is that we can't list it as a sound healing. Fucking bizarre, but we could call it a sound journey and it's not gonna be an issue. I don't know, I'm sorry about my little political piss off. But I would love to just kind of start off with something super simple, and we could just literally roll up. I can set up anywhere, would love to set up anywhere. Just let's pick a spot and let's just play with this stuff. We were talking about that, Serena and Dominic yesterday, that let's not wait. I'd love to do some live stuff. I'd like to do some pre-recorded stuff. And I think that I don't want to get mired in trying to find a location or build or buy an existing trailer or something like that. Let's just start doing some stuff. Get out there, fucking do it. I think that's all Lucien just teed me up for that, and that was just that game truck idea. But there was a lot of good stuff that came up today, and I think the important thing is just getting the rubber to the road. Let's try something, even if it's not the right thing out the box.
I agree. And I do think that this idea of, kind of doing something will immediately give us some feedback on how to tailor what we're really trying to build. I also intuitively am feeling the need for a person who's can create programmed sound with visuals. I'm not a technologist, and I don't know how to do it. I have a vision of what that would look like, even in my designs. Like the screen would show what the background is right now of what you're showing us, Mark, right? Being in this beautiful forest. And, we need someone, yes, a playa alchemist. We need someone who has that skill set, who can directly drop in with us right now to do that. So I'd like to manifest that, because between Lucinda and I and Emil, we have the ability to, I think, live record a lot and have little gestalts of program with live voice, with instrument and harp and our voices, and Emil, that instrument you were playing, so we could record some of that pretty easily and make little audio bites, but really to put it together in an immersive environment with visuals and stuff, I would like to have a technologist come onto this team and help us. So kind of wanted to put that out there and see what your thoughts are on that. And then number 2, I would like us to start kind of thinking about what piece of this project between right now us 4, and then we can catch Lucinda and Dominic up through this, what we can each kind of piece out right now that we can kind of focus on to move the needle. So if we were to break out this project into parts, like you were talking about, right? It's the idea of taking this, this Pegasus or your Airstream or whatever the shell is, and creating a build out in it. It's the concept of understanding a little bit of the programming, and even if it's just the minimal viable product of the actual programming, it's actually coming up with the steps of that programming, what that actually looks like. If it's about testing, right? So Mark, if you're down to go like meet up, and it's about maybe picking 3 locations with 3 dates and scheduling that and seeing what happens with that, and using that as feedback, right? So I just kind of want to see how we can concretely own some of this and move it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, personally, I don't want to monopolize here, but for me, the logistics of that are super simple. It's just making a decision. The elements are, if it's amplified, I've got it covered. If it's not amplified, that's the same thing. It's available, like you bring whatever your instruments are. But if we need power, I've got generators, I've got batteries, I've got there's a lot of ways that we can do this. It just depends on how do you want to do it. I think the space can also predict how we want to do it. And I wouldn't be afraid. I'd like to play with the idea of doing stuff with, even if we go to a space where amplification is going to be an issue, let's just use the Science Disco headsets. I've got these 200 headsets. I'm like, fuck. So and I've done this where we've done simultaneously, we've done a yoga, this is on the beach. We've done a yoga experience on one spot, and then people are dancing to disco on another area. And then there's other people just chilling on a third channel doing like meditation stuff. So you could run multiple things going on. And I mean, the opportunities are totally available. So we just got to find a spot, and it could be really, look at all the open spaces that we have available to us. And just, you set it up, you run in there, just play with it. And like you said, once we do it, Serena, we get feedback right away. And then we also can start building a following by somehow getting people to log in or getting their social information to, build a database of it. And then once we get the mobile stuff happening, we can also go to a facility and pop in there and do something at a facility and do something for 500 people or 200 people or something like that. And it's a building point. Just start somewhere,
Yep. I agree, 100%.
Yeah, and Lucienne has that park right across from Savannah House where we could literally just go right across the fucking street.
Yeah.
I say do a bunch of live events with you and with Lucinda and whoever else is available with this, that are the artists that can actually do the sound healings, sound journeys, and start getting some interest going. Because right now we just need to kickstart stuff. People are craving, as I mentioned yesterday at Golden Gate Park, people love stuff. They were walking by looking at us with headphones on, dancing and stuff like that to a static dance, kind of going, what's going on? And Gabriel, the guy that was promoting it, was handing out flyers like, hey, we're going to be here every Saturday through the summer. And if you want to join us, And just because right now people are coming from a space of fear and lockdown and stuff like that. And, that's why I'm super motivated to just, let's start fucking now. And did I pick up on it that on Friday we're supposed to have something that we're presenting or giving that's like, what's our first plan of action or our first action item?
Yeah, so my understanding is that by Friday, we're kind of like presenting like kind of what the direction that we're taking and like what we're wanting to sprout or get funded or where we're going to start, like you said. So I don't know in what format we're supposed to have that available for people, but my intuition, given what Lucien was saying about asking to share this document, is that it would be something that other people could kind of, read and review, that then maybe Savannah House could take in and really build into a proper kind of investor deck so that they can get the funding. That's my intuition with it.
That's what they said during the technology one earlier today, was
Okay.
for him to have the Google Doc or putting the deck together, or if it was already available. Same thing with Sound Alliance. We're going to have like a Google Doc that everyone can go into from like the PR, marketing, Resonance Alliance. So it seems like it's kind of like a piecemeal, at level 2.
Got it. Something that's been helping me as I take any project on right now in general, or even deciding to work with a potential client or a group of people, is the why. And I think it's really important to kind of keep that mind frame. And what I mean by that is, why are we building these sound portals? Okay, to do certain things, right? To educate people, to give people healing, to give people an avenue. There's so many reasons why. Why are we doing all of that? Why are we even working as an effort? Just like Mark was saying, people are needing this, right? Why is that important for us right now? So really backing into the why, I think, will get us down to like really the fundamental crux. And I think that I would like to offer that, there's different ways of explaining this information and structuring it. And we need to, as our group, come up with what those specific buckets are that we would like to have structure in. So meaning that, if it's a business plan or if it's this concept, there's a summary, and then there's a cost analysis, and then there's potential partnerships or artists that we want to work for, like something that was, or work with, like something that was coming up as we were deciding about this playground, is the fact that we could actually employ very famous artists, very, people who are very, very, very minutely focused on this kind of stuff, and have their work be presented, right? So how does that all affect what we're doing? So just from that level, is there anyone here that's like personally interested in like, kind of the structure of these parts of the project, one or the other, that they would like to work on themselves?
Well, thank you for laying that out. So to bring the tangibility and the physicality.
Thank you, Emil.
And and Mark, regarding what you're saying, it's this synthesis between action right now and long-term addressing of a grander picture. And we want both elements for sure. I feel very inspired to directly lay out ideas around the sound playground, because I've been thinking about this for a while. Like, one thing that comes up that I want to mention is like, what instruments can be put that are relatively indestructible, basically, or how could those be designed? So I can put together some ideas for that. And also, we spoke yesterday, me and Serena, about the permitting aspect and who to talk to about that, and the benefits, of course, and writing out some kind of benefits, like why is this beneficial to the commons? And I definitely can articulate that in regards to the sound playground, and for the mobile units too, but I feel like I'm not the one that could speak about that most eloquently. So to bring it around, I can lay out some tangible foundational ideas that could be brought on Friday about the sound playground, and I can run them by us each day to get feedback and modification on it.
Awesome. Thank you. as far as Mark, what you're saying about just like going out and doing this, what's your availability to, like, let's just say you, me, Dom, Lucinda, whoever's around, you know, could do this in the next few days or a week, or like what does that look like for you in terms of timeline to play with this?
Okay, I can say yes to, today's Tuesday, right?
Today is it today? God, the days, yes, I think it's Tuesday.
It's okay, so it's Tuesday, March 80th.
Exactly.
It is. It's like Tuesday, March 80th.
I agree.
I can meet up, I can come up to San Francisco tomorrow or Thursday, but I'm pretty sure I'm heading down to LA like on Friday or Saturday.
Okay.
So I would be happy to meet up with you guys in person. And I have the space. I think I had a great conversation with Dominic yesterday, by the way. And Amanda, I want to thank you for being the conduit for connection to the other two groups, because you're sitting in on all three groups, right?
Yeah, I'm sitting in on like as much as I can in the other ones. And it's like, because I know that there's like a vernacular that's being used, and also like I'm like in for whatever portals, because it's like whatever's being used here is going to be moved around wherever it needs to be in the country, or it needs to be scaled down to put it into a hospital space or into another movie theater. It's like you're seeing like the multimodality of this that can be utilized. You're starting here, but it's like going to go all these other places. So
right.
I can.
Where are you based out of right now? Where are you?
I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. I used to live in San Francisco, and I'm probably moving back there. But when Corona hit, I was around family, and so came back to Omaha, where I'm from originally. And I usually go between there, Phoenix, and LA. Okay. But LA is kind of shut down right now, and I was just like, I'm going to be in open land.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to find out where you were at. I didn't know that, and I know that.
I've known Lucian and like Samantha Sweetwater and Ian Michael Hibert very well. That's the house that I used to live in. So.
Well, oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, were you there last year?
Yep.
I met you at Savannah House. Yeah, because I did, because I was there multiple times. Okay, got it. Now, because I felt familiar with you. And Emil, I know you're in.
I was around, but I was like, I travel a lot for work, so it's like, but yeah, when all Corona hit, it kind of like, where am I going to go right now? And it's just family dynamics. I needed to be around here for stuff. So.
Well, the reason I just wanted to make that connection was that to answer your question, Serena, is that like, yeah, we can come up with some low hanging fruit items to get just something going on. It's like if people are hungry, give them some fucking crackers at first, and then while we're building the meal in the background. And I know that you, I know, Emil, you want to build a playground concept, and that's something that's going to be much further down the road. And also getting the permits for the stuff to bring it into a church, a school or a business and stuff like that. Those are much further down the road. But I think that the immediacy, I think, is the word that you used, Emil, yesterday. Is just that, let's come up with some stuff locally. And now that Serena, you and I and Dominic can meet up in San Francisco as soon as tomorrow or Thursday, maybe tomorrow's better. I'd rather get shit done. I'm the kind of guy that says, let's do stuff sooner than later. We can meet I have a space there that we can meet up in that's actually potentially a space that we could use in the future. And I'm operating in two mindsets. It's like the current Corona situation and the post-Corona, which means that, okay, if we had an unfettered experience where we don't have to worry about proximity and stuff like that, which I think we're going to be getting to that soon. I don't think that we're going to be living in this fucking 6-foot zone. I'm like, you know what? Life just doesn't work like that. So there are people like myself and maybe a few others who are like, you know what? I don't mind sitting next to somebody. I don't want you, like all in my space, like right here, but I'm not in fear about this stuff either. So the reason I'm just mentioning this is that we could have a much different experience. Like when I do sound healings at my events, we sometimes have so many people that we'd have to kind of go, shoulder to shoulder and kind of pack them in. And that actually creates a whole nother great energy too. So to do now in my head, I'm thinking, okay, to do a sound healing with proper distancing and stuff like that, it's going to limit the number of people that you can do it with, and it's like, fuck, it makes it problematic, you know. But let's meet up tomorrow, maybe.
So let's check in with Dom tomorrow. Let me open my calendar. I have Thursday way more wide open. Let me open this tomorrow and let's see. So basically starting from 12:30 to 4, I have clients, a group session, and then this call. So I could meet up before 12:30, which is earlier, or I could meet up pretty much any time before or after our call on Thursday, and we could like maybe even go to a park. I could bring my amp. We could bring some sound. We could actually just like see what happens too if we wanted to.
Well, yeah, Thursday. So Thursday afternoon, evening's better, or is okay.
I would prefer Thursday. Tomorrow I could meet, but it would be like, it'd have to be before 12:30 because I've got like calls all the way till 9 p.m. after that.
Okay, got it. And then
Thursday I could do any time besides the block. I blocked out Thursday completely besides this call.
All right, well, I can do Thursday evening because I just realized I have a plumber coming over on Thursday. So my evening would be open and I could come up to the city and we could do some stuff up there and maybe grab, a restaurant's open?
No. So we could meet up in a park. We could just meet in a park and we could make a little picnic, you know?
This Corona is so fucking inconvenient. I want to go. Let's go have dinner. Let's go meet up and like, oh, we can't.
Well, we can pick up to go dinner and we can eat somewhere.
Right, well, I want to have us meet at a space I have. I'll send you the location later. Awesome. All right. So to try to put something here together for Friday, we can develop and figure out what that might be on. Although Thursday is really kind of late because this. Oof.
Okay, maybe continue this conversation.
Yeah.
On another call,
right.
Or a message or something. Okay, yeah. And Andrea was saying she has to go.
Oh yeah, it's 4. All right. Well, so how are we gonna wrap up this call here?
Well, where are we at with the trailers? I mean the mobile units. We have some, so all your information on it, Serena, is on the Google Docs now.
And what I think needs to be built out is sort of like a little mini plan, like a 1-pager essentially that has like a summary of the mission, has maybe a few images of what we're looking for, and then has kind of the different, like we were talking about yesterday, the different use cases, right? And then from those use cases, me and Mark and Lucinda and whoever wants to be on board can derive and start with one using either Lucian's shell or a gifted shell or whatever it might be that the shell is. But from that, what I see as a major need is someone who can come in and really take ownership of the actual sound program that we would test with one of those derivatives. And I think Lucinda seems to be like really into the content. So I'm intuitively feeling like we could, you know, kind of lean on her to do that and see if she'd be open to doing that. But that doesn't give us much time, right? So I think that we need to converse over email tonight and kind of, number 1, set up our meeting, Mark. And then number 2, maybe organize like, what our goal is with getting this thing on Friday and have people kind of brainstorm on what we want to present on Friday. So maybe making that ask and having them contribute to the document and seeing where it goes from there, right? So I unfortunately don't have the time to lift and write a whole summary either. And I think me and you are kind of doing a lot already. Emil and Mark, you're coming in with being in person and live. So I really want other components and members of the group to not just come in and give us ideas, but like write something down or, you know, kind of take ownership of a piece, because otherwise we just have a bunch of ideas, you know, and that's not where we want to be. So yeah, we're at time right now. So I think that we should maybe just kind of do a little summary via email, do some scheduling, and then see what Lucinda and Dominic come back with as well.
Right.
And then, you know, that third, are we involving Danielle, or is she coming in, or?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
Let's start off tomorrow then with like, what can people take responsibility for?
Okay. Let's do that then. And then maybe, you know, we can go from there and it'll work itself out. But I definitely want people to really feel like they can really contribute, because it's not going to work if it's just on one of us, you know? So that's important.
I'd like to plant a seed, because I like doing that. I think that probably the simplest, most low-hanging fruit option would be just to pick a date and create an experience across the street from Savannah House in the park. And it could be non-amplified, or it can be amplified. Or and if amplification with power is a problem because noise permits or sound permits, then we could flip it to a non-sound permitted event where I could use the headsets. Because I think that you can create a situation. Well, if you do it acoustically, you don't have to worry about audio permits. Sound permits. So that would be something that the players, you and Lucinda and whoever else, Dominic, if you guys want to play stuff instrumentally or non-amplified, then that'd be great. But if you want to do something with amplification or if exterior sounds are going to be an issue, these headsets can work. And what I'll do is when we meet on Thursday, have you used silent disco headsets before? Okay.
Oh yeah, I attended a New Year's party at the Battery, and it was all silent disco. And so all of us were walking around with these headsets, and it was super fun. And the Battery has like a noise ordinance after a certain time, so that's why they did it. Yeah. But it was super fun because all of us were like jamming, but like in our own little worlds. Right. You know, so
it creates that sonic bubble where you're not, outside noise is not going to be affecting it. So the seed I'm planting is that we can do this as soon as whatever, May 30th. You know, you pick a date and let's just say fucking do it. I'm already probably coming up to San Francisco on May 30th to do a silent disco party. So that would be, if I can double up on that, then great. I also keep equipment in San Francisco, so that's an option. Awesome. So that's the seed I wanted to plant. Let's just plant something and fucking build off of that. So at least it's something.
I think that that's a great idea, and that we should definitely do that. And then from my experience of like literally amplifying my own sound on Laguna Beach that day, sometimes you just do it and you apologize later and you say you didn't know that you couldn't amplify sound, and people don't really get into trouble. So I'm a big proponent of like, say sorry, ask for forgiveness later, and just try it. So, we can also do that and just see what happens.
All right, and I'll handle, because I have it, I'll handle the equipment.
Yes. And we could, make sure that we had like some kind of like good sanitizer for you if you wanted to make, we could try to maybe see if we could. Yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
I'm a burner. I got
it. Yeah, I figured. Great. Okay. Well, you know what, Mark, I feel so happy that you're here, and I can just feel such a beautiful energy. And I just want to thank you for being here and, bringing your tools and helping us make something happen. So thank you.
I'm getting as much out of this as everybody else will as well. And you'll see me get as much pleasure from the experience. I'm going to, do we have phone numbers for each other yet?
I can type in mine right now. And if you send me yours, I can shoot you a text as well.
Okay. Because I want to send you a video of that, and I'll send it to you as well, Emil, of that Palace of Fine Arts thing that somebody did a video of it. They did a really good job of it, and it brings in the energy of what we had the experience there. And I'm just like, I'm so fucking excited I want to go back there and do that space, man. It's just like incredible. When I find the right spaces, I just like really get excited. All right.
And then, I met your friend today, Bradford.
How did you just meet him?
So it was really random. He found me on Facebook and then looked at my website and scheduled a wellness call because I like to something that I've been trying to help people with through COVID is analyzing their tongue and then helping them troubleshoot what they can do with their environment to kind of mitigate that imbalance. And so I actually analyzed his tongue today, and we just had this like whole beautiful conversation, and you came up, and so it was just like.
So what did he just like? He showed you his tongue, and he.
That's how I can, from an Ayurvedic perspective, I can look at a person's tongue and see what kind of imbalances are going on, and then I can prescribe sound and other things in their direct environment that they can just do little tweaks with that can kind of balance them. So we just had this balancing conversation, and it was just phenomenal. And I'm happy to analyze your tongue for you too in person when we see each other. So.
I'm just so amazed by that. That's awesome. Wow. Wow.
All right. Well, everyone have a good day. And Emil, I know you said you couldn't catch up right after. Should we text each other and figure out a time later?
I actually can. My schedule changed, so we could drop in for a little bit if you want.
Okay, so I'll bounce off.
15 minutes.
Yeah. 15 minutes.
Okay.
Emil, good to see you, brother.
Yeah.
We'll see you, man. Serena, so are we firm for something Thursday evening-ish?
Yeah, I'm going to shoot an email out to Dominic, Lucinda, me, and you and see if Thursday evening will work. And I gave you my my cell phone. If you text me, then I'll text you. We can shoot over text as well.
Okay. Yeah, connect with me on that. And really, thank you for the words. My number one love language is words of affirmation. And you just gifted me with my number one love language. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, guys.
Day. Okay, bye.
Bye.